Only if I'm hoping the live election coverage is coming. Apparently, Ted Cruz has already won a state. So, Donald Trump might be in a little bit of trouble. But I don't care about that. I care about what's going to happen on the Democratic side. Is Bernie Sanders going to make up some ground or not? Come on, Jake. No.
Alright, welcome to the Young Turks coverage of Super Saturday, otherwise known as Weekend at Bernie's. Get it? I'm here all weekend, unfortunately. Okay, now fortunately we like this, we love this, we're having fun. Okay, so the Republicans already have results. We'll get to Democratic results throughout the night. We'll get to more Republican results throughout the night. But we have the first call as soon as we get on air. Ted Cruz has won the state of Kansas. Okay, now let's understand. Okay, wait, before I get to more, Ted Cruz winning in Maine. What is this? And as you see there, he has at this point more than doubled Trump's vote in Kansas.
And Cruz is the one to turn Kansas around. They've had a lot of problems, but I think he can. I think he can fix it.
Yeah, he can fix it. Yeah.
What they've needed is conservative leadership.
They need tax cuts.
They need tax cuts. Yeah. There's a tax somewhere out in the woods. They're going to track it down. And they're going to kill it.
Yeah. And then Ted Cruz is their guy to do that. Okay, so now this is dramatic. So let's. Now we've got a lot of Democratic races that are coming up, but since they don't have results yet, and I have all the different poll closings for you in a little bit, although they're annoyingly in Central Time, and understand that we don't have Democratic results in Kansas yet because the Democrats caucus is at a slightly different time than the Republicans. We're not ignoring the results; there aren't any results yet. It's the same day, same state, but different closings. Yes. Okay. So now, having said that, let's discuss what's happening on the Republican side here. Now, with Ted Cruz with a huge victory in Kansas, 51-24 so far, and now leading in Maine, this is significant. Now, Kansas is a caucus which helps the more organized Ted Cruz. A lot of these states are closed caucuses, which means that independents who are more likely to support Donald Trump cannot come in and vote for Donald Trump, which also helps Cruz. Nonetheless, the crushing style of victory so far, or the manner in which Cruz has crushed Trump in Kansas and is currently leading in Maine, is a big surprise given how the race was going. So there was the expectation that with the polling indicating that Trump would win Maine and not necessarily win in Kansas, but at least be close. The fact that these results are not anywhere near that and far more leaning towards Cruz than against Trump indicates that perhaps we have a turn. Okay, so we might have our first turn in the Republican race, very, very late on in the race here, obviously. Now, you remember in 2012, they went up and down, all the different candidates. There was a ton of turns. I said in the beginning, I don't think there'll be very many turns. After it became apparent that Trump was the leader. Before that, I was skeptical along with everyone else, right? As soon as he was the leader, I said he'll hold this for a long, long time, but he won't necessarily hold it all the way. And recently, a couple of days ago, especially after that last dick debate, I said, I think there might be a turn. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, it looks like there's a turn.
I think we're going to have 6 more pieces of information. We can compare, even in the other states of which many he won't win. We can see if he beat the polling by a lot. I think that there's probably some effect from the debate, maybe, but it's difficult to say when there's the other factors of, for instance, it being a caucus, which traditionally hasn't been very good for Donald Trump, it being closed, and this being an example of a state, and I've referenced this, I believe, at the debate, that people, I think Kansas might have been the example, where people were saying in advance of it that he has no presence. There are no employees, there are no ads. He thinks he's going to coast in all these states. And then you had the Trump, the organizer saying on Facebook, this guy has no idea how the delegate math works or how delegates work. He thinks it's just a national contest. You're up in the polls nationally, and that's all you have to do. But that said, look, it's obviously good for Ted Cruz to get this, and every state Ted Cruz is able to win, even if it's not a winner-take-all one, it makes it a little bit harder for Trump to get those 50% plus 1 delegates to avoid a contested convention. That said, is this the beginning of Cruz himself getting 50%? That I think is a more difficult case to make.
All right, well, so listen, here are the reasons why I thought there might be a turn. One, I thought the comments about his penis were a bridge too far.
Shaft too far.
Yes, apparently so. And, at some point, the good folks in the Midwest, like Kansas perhaps, would go, that's not Kansas values, right? And here we are. By the way, Nate Silver's 538 was the first to point this out, at least that I saw. There is now a Midwestern wall against Trump.
Really?
Yeah. Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Minnesota goes to Rubio. So there's a wall going right down the middle of the country against Donald Trump.
That is Cruz's spot, man.
Right.
And Alaska.
And so
Canada too. He's going to clean up.
yeah, well, he's from Canada.
So Nate Silver had a breakdown of the sorts of states that Cruz wins and the sorts of states that Donald Trump wins. And Cruz, so far, it's probably just coincidence, but wins big, geographically spread out, which tend to be more rural states, whereas Trump tends to do better in tiny, almost like his hands states. And so they compared the total geographic distance that the states they'd won covered, and he had like 4 times as much geography under Cruz.
Right. So Penisgate was reason number 1. Reason number 2 is the entire Republican Party is turned on him. How much of an assault can he withstand? Not just Romney, Paul Ryan, Glenn Beck, Mark Levin. And the list goes on and on. I know that the latter two have been with Cruz all along, but so many people, every editorial is against him. Now that everybody's saying in the Republican establishment, he's not really a conservative. They keep hitting him with his hypocrisy. Now, on top of that, those are the first 2 reasons. The third reason is his enormous arrogance, right? Now, arrogance almost always costs you at some point, right? And this guy doesn't think that he needs to do any ads, right? Because he's not raising money from super PACs, so all right, God bless, right? He actually doesn't want to spend that much of his own money because he's cheap. So he's actually just not running ads, and he doesn't have much of a ground game. Well, then his ignorance is point number 4. I mean, after Iowa, the next morning, he said on television, I guess there's this thing called the ground game. I just found out about it. Like, you're running for president, and for all those months, and you never bothered to investigate what a ground game means? A ground game means your ability to have supporters on the ground, volunteers on the ground, turning out the vote, and doing all the necessary things to get people excited at the ground at those states. How could anyone running for president not know that? That's only if you're enormously arrogant and ignorant, which is a combination that usually goes together. Yeah. So when you have that toxic stew, at some point it catches up with you. Now, there was a good question here, and there still is, whether that point is distant enough that he'll be able to withstand this assault, because he's already won so much.
That big lead already.
Right, he has a big lead. But, it's not that big. Ted Cruz won Texas. That's the largest state that's gone so far. New York hasn't gone. California hasn't gone. Florida, Ohio, Illinois, none of these have gone, and they're still coming up. So he better watch himself. I think he's in real trouble here. And unfortunately, as I thought the real challenger to him would be Cruz, it turns out it's Cruz, right? And Rubio's a boy. He's a lightweight. He isn't winning anywhere. And the establishment keeps rooting for it to be Rubio, but here's what they're missing. The Republican voters want a dick. Maybe not a dick that talks about his dick, but they want a dick, right? Yeah. Rubio seems friendly, even though he's not. His policies are vicious. I understand that. But he seems kind. That's why the establishment likes him. Continuity on the outside. Change on the outside looks, Latino, young, continuity on the inside. But the voters don't want that. The Republican voters are like, give me somebody vicious. And then when Trump is having troubles, they look over to Cruz and they're like, yeah, that guy is definitely sufficiently vicious.
You know what just happened? They spread the dick around. You're spreading the dick vote.
That's right.
Predicted it.
So it looks like we might have a turn. Jimmy, thoughts?
I don't. The biggest dick in the race besides Trump was Chris Christie. So it's funny that they didn't cotton to Chris Christie more, and they're now cottoning to Ted Cruz. It just seems like. Ted Cruz, I guess he knew more about the Republican primaries than anybody, right? Or certainly that I did. I thought he was going way too far right. I know that's what you're supposed to do, but he certainly proved me wrong. It looks like he knows what he's doing. He alienated the whole party, yet he's still the number 2 guy in line. He's their last hope. The guys that everyone hates in the party, the insiders hate him. They just happen to hate one guy. I don't even think they hate Donald Trump. They just fear him because they can't control him, right?
Yeah. Also, by the way, as more results come in, I think we're at 9%. And it is somewhat shifted. At 9%, Cruz is still up, but now it's 43-37. So much closer.
So let me ask you this question. Why such a crazy backlash from the party regulars, from the Republican establishment against Trump? Is it because that he hurts them on down ballot races because of that?
No, I have a great answer to that. But first, let me just note what's on the screen there. Kentucky results have started to come in. And it's just 1% reporting. But Right now, Trump leads 39 to 36 against Cruz. That is not good news for Trump. He was expected to do better in Kentucky, much better than he was in Kansas, and he's only up by 3 points with just 1% reporting. So that's very, very far from certain, but not a great start for Trump in Kentucky. Louisiana's going to go later. Now, for the Democrats, we also have Kansas that's going to close a little bit later. Maine goes tomorrow. We also have Louisiana for the Democrats, and Louisiana is very likely to go to Hillary Clinton, but Nebraska and Kansas are for the Democrats today, and they are more likely to go for Bernie Sanders, and hence they don't count.
No, they don't. For Kentucky, the last Western Kentucky University did a poll near the end of February, and they had Trump at 35, Rubio at 22, Cruz at only 15. So Trump was up 13, but Trump was up 20 over Cruz in the poll. Again, only 1%, but I've seen a shift.
Okay.
I'm trying to find out how the allocation goes.
So what was your answer to me?
Okay. I'm going to ask the guys in the studio, see if you guys can find a clean picture of Bernie Sanders speaking, a clean video right now, okay? Jimmy, let me answer your very important question. The donors that actually control the Republican Party, they don't control it 98%. Apparently, since Trump exists, they control it 99%. Not 100% because of Trump, but about 99%. They hate Trump because he won't take their orders. Okay, this is actually a problem they had back in 2000 with John McCain. They asked him, like when he came in front of Grover Norquist's tax group, "Hey, what are you going to do?" And he said, "Well, I'm my own man, and I'm going to do what I think is right." Bush said, "Where's my orders? I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do." Right? And so they're all back Bush in 2000. Okay, so now Trump won't listen to any of them. So, Jesus Christ, we don't know. And he might be great, he might be bad. That is not a risk donors are willing to take.
Yeah.
Okay. Now with Cruz, he has the trappings of independence, but in reality, they know at his core he's an order taker. Right? It's just a matter of who's giving him the orders. Right? So at least he is purchasable. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay.
Now they don't like that they couldn't purchase him earlier, or these four guys have bought him, and the others are not in on the action yet, right? But I knew that the turn was beginning, or I sensed, and I could be wrong about all this, by the way. I sensed the turn was beginning when Lindsey Graham said it might have to be Cruz. Okay, Lindsey Graham is as establishment as it gets. That he represents the military-industrial complex. If the military-industrial complex says maybe Cruz, then it's all of a sudden maybe Cruz, right? Yeah. And here we are. Okay, do we have this? Can we go to this, Irina, or no? No? Okay.
Also, Kentucky is proportional. So if they basically tie, if it ends up close to what it is at right now, it's not as bad for Cruz or for Trump, really, as it could be.
Yeah, and so, by the way, on the speeches, there's speeches in all these election nights, etc. They've now gone totally off the beaten path, right? It used to be that you would have an election, you'd get the results, and then people would speak. Now they're just like, I'm going to speak whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Ted Cruz has already spoken twice, I think. So can he speak 3 times, 8 times? I don't know. But he's already spoken.
He's also expecting to do a midnight mass. So.
Okay, so we're going to talk about... Okay, we've got Bernie Sanders right now. That's why I brought this up. Because none of the elections on the Democrat side are closed yet.
Secretary Clinton has a number of super
She was his surrogate. She was his sounding board.
One of her super PACs recently reported that they raised $25 million from special interests, $15 million from Wall Street alone.
Give his trust.
Now, every candidate in the history of the world, Democrat, Republican, when they receive huge amounts of money from Wall Street or the drug companies or the fossil fuel industries, what they always say, not going to impact me. And our question is, if it's not going to impact their decisions, why would Wall Street be spending $15 million? And this is not just Hillary Clinton, this is all the Republican candidates as well, receiving huge amounts of money. Second point with Secretary Clinton. As some of you know, she has given a number of speeches behind closed doors to Wall Street. In fact, she has been paid $225,000 per speech. Now, I kind of think if you're going to be paid $225,000 for a speech, it must be a fantastic speech, a brilliant speech which you would want to share with the American people, right? $225,000, extraordinary speech, Shakespearean speech. So we all look forward to seeing it. All right, second issue that we talk about in this campaign is not just the corrupt campaign finance system, it is a rigged economy. Now, what do we mean by a rigged economy? What we mean is that for a start...
All right, we're going to continue to listen, monitor Senator Bernie Sanders.
All right, let's take it off. All right, we're going to continue to listen, but you guys aren't because we're not going to cover it anymore.
He didn't say anything racist. He didn't say anything xenophobic. He hasn't told his crowd to beat the shit out of someone. So we're going to go back to something else.
He didn't have his crowd literally raise their arms up in the air like that. Did you see that picture going around?
Yeah.
I tweeted. Insanity. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Trump's a madman. Bernie Sanders, we had to cut away from it because he went approximately 7 minutes in his speech without mentioning his penis. Not helping the ratings, so we're moving away now. Okay, now to be fair, we don't have Bernie Sanders, we don't have a cameraman there, so sad day for us, okay? I wish we could do better for you guys. TYTnetwork.com/join, so we can afford a cameraman at every speech. Okay, we got a lot to answer. You asked about Howard Dean. We've got the Democratic races coming up, which I definitely obviously want to talk about. But I do want to give a couple of tweets here because I really enjoyed them. Mike Padelli, and sorry for, I'm sure, getting your name all wrong. Watching the Young Turks, hashtag TYT Live at 1:30 in the morning in Germany. Thanks for helping us to keep our faith in the sanity in large parts of the U.S. No problem. I know only like 5 German phrases / words, and none of them apply here. So, okay. Danke. Okay.
Anything about that? That's right.
Yeah. I love this one. The Progressive Cynic sends in a tweet. If this is a turn against Trump, don't you love that Christie sold his soul to a losing candidate, gaining nothing? Yes.
Yeah. At that point,
excellent point.
Trump becomes empty calories at that point. There's nothing there, nothing to sustain your political career later on.
So, Chris Christie embarrassing himself like that is wonderful. Yeah. But as we all get excited about this, don't, because Ted Cruz is the only guy in the race worse than Donald Trump.
So I know this is like potential. Yeah. Like theoretically, if Cruz did pass 50%, which I think is effectively impossible, not necessarily impossible, it's improbable. That would be the worst case. But with 2%, Trump has actually taken the lead. They switched their 39-36 the other way. Again, it's super early in either case.
In Kentucky. No, he had the lead. He just had a 3-point lead. It's now a 4-point. That's all. He had.
You're right. Okay, I was that wrong.
Yeah. Okay. And
thank God.
Yeah. The only reason why Cruz winning the nomination is slightly better is because he has less of a chance of winning the general election, I believe.
You think?
Yes. But I'll tell you why.
But doesn't the polling show Cruz does better against Hillary than Trump does?
It does for now. But remember, Trump is running a Republican primary election now. He will switch completely during the general election because he has no moorings, he has no principles.
Right.
So he will all of a sudden become what the general population wants. He'll morph into a guy who is at least 60% progressive when he's in the general election. Now, that doesn't tell you anything about what he's going to do when he's in office, okay?
But Cruz will remain the insane right winger that he is, and he doesn't have the populist appeal that Donald Trump has. He doesn't have the appeal with independents that Donald Trump has. He can't turn around to Hillary Clinton if that's the nominee and say. And with Bernie Sanders, I don't mention him in this context because no one has an advantage against Bernie Sanders. That's in the polling and for logical reasons in terms of populism and independence.
But he would lose, though.
But he would
definitely lose.
yeah, that's funny. But if Ted Cruz is against Hillary Clinton, he can't do what Trump could. Trump could say, "Hey, didn't I buy you earlier?"
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. But Cruz can't do that. So he has a lot of disadvantages that Trump doesn't have in a general election. Now, that being said, about 2/3 of the country seems to hate Trump at this point. So, obviously, that's a significant disadvantage for Trump in a general election. But either way, I mean, I wish it wasn't either one of these guys, because you know me, I don't want to take chances. I'd rather have it be Kasich. I'd rather have it be anybody but those two, because I believe Hillary Clinton could lose any election. The Democrats could lose any election, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to take that chance with these monsters.
And we know that Trump can switch. Megyn Kelly played the 6 different clips at the last debate where from evening to the next morning he would totally reverse himself, as if he hadn't been paying attention to the previous night. I wish that we were doing like a full show today because so much great stuff has happened. Did you read Louis C.K.'s article? He wrote an email to his supporters about Trump and about how they should go for Kasich instead.
No,
it's just great about offering something more approaching an actual choice between the Democrats and the Republicans. He says that he personally likes both Bernie and Hillary, but he thinks that we should probably have a Republican president because he thinks there should be balance. It should go back and forth. But he says that like you can't make me support. I shouldn't have to support Kasich because he used some language I'm not going to use because you have a fascist, lying C-word jackbag effectively for your candidate now, which is Trump. And then I have to wonder though, in terms of Trump's ability to switch his positions. He may be in a personal meltdown right now because I just saw today at one of his rallies, he was talking about his hands again. He said, people come up to me and say, you have such large, strong hands. I think he's gone insane. No, nobody's ever come up to him and said that.
So this is another point as to why we thought he might have an issue at some point. Because if you push the bully enough, right, he's going to overreact. And I think he's in the middle of overreacting about his penis right now, which I suppose is fitting. Didn't you say that you saw that article where for 25 years he's been sending something to Variety or something about his hands?
Was it Esquire with the magazine? So
I think it was. I don't think it still exists, but I'm gonna try to find out.
Okay, we'll find it. Johnny will find it. But yes, someone I saw it. I had it up on my computer. I saw the website. He was sending pictures of his hands to this editor who wrote. Like a passing comment in an article about how he has short, stubby fingers. So he would send him all the time pictures of his hands, saying, "Look at my fingers, looks pretty good." And the guy would return them, says, "No, they look pretty small to me."
It was for Spy magazine, but that person now writes for Vanity Fair.
Vanity Fair.
All right, we've got Bernie back. Bernie's back.
People over a 30-year period getting criminal records, and a whole lot of people ending up in jail with their lives ruined. Right now, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug alongside of heroin. Scientists are arguing, the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but nobody believes that marijuana is equivalent to heroin. So what we have proposed, and I've introduced legislation to do this, is to take marijuana out of the federal control section. In our federalist type society, states can legalize it or not if they want to, but it should not be a federal crime. And here is the racial aspect of that, because it turns out that according to studies, the white community and the black community do marijuana at about equal rates. But blacks end up being arrested 4 times more than whites for possession.
It's weird. I thought
when we talk about reforming the criminal justice system, it means police department reform as well.
that Clinton is going to do criminal justice reform more than Bernie Sanders. No one in their right mind.
I am a former mayor, Burlington, Vermont. I work very closely with the police. Vast majority of police officers in this country are honest, hardworking, and they have an enormously difficult job. But when a police officer, like any other public official, breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable.
I don't understand what those women on the right-hand side are doing with this row racket. Or the left-hand side. Or up top.
I know Cat Williams.
Local police departments around the country.
Yeah.
We have got to make police departments look like the diversity of the communities they are serving. We have got to do away with minimal sentencing.
So Sarah Silverman with a very strong endorsement of Bernie Sanders last night.
Yeah.
She says she dumped Hillary for Bernie.
My state of Vermont, New Hampshire is right.
She dumped Hillary for Bernie.
Yeah.
And I know across this country we have a major crisis in opiate addiction and in heroin.
The guy, people, it's just such an unlikely character, right? Such a
One person per day.
TBH, and he's the guy.
What we have got to do is begin addressing this epidemic as a health issue, not a criminal issue. What that means is we have to greatly expand mental health facilities all over this country.
There's no pencil for mental health.
When people need treatment, they should be able to get it. Not have
The
to
lady
wait
who
2 months.
seems like she's wearing a hijab in the background. Trump would have already had it removed.
Before he even came out.
Let me take a moment to discuss some other disagreements.
Actually, Trump would have removed half of this crowd behind him.
Yeah.
That we raise money in very different ways. When I began this campaign, we had to make a decision. Unfortunately, in the real world, it takes hundreds of millions of dollars to run for president of the United States, maybe even more than that, maybe over $1 billion. That's a huge amount of money. Huge amount of money. I can't use the word huge anymore. It always brings forth a response, but it's a lot of money. So we have to make this decision. How are we going to raise this money? Well, virtually all candidates do it. The way Secretary Clinton does it. You have a super PAC, you go to Wall Street, you go to the billionaires, you say, pour millions of dollars into our campaign. Thanks very much. We chose to do it a different way. We went to the middle class and working class of this country, and we said, if you want real change in this country, if you want a candidate who's going to stand up to the billionaires at Wall Street, we need your help. And this is what's happened over the last 10 months. And in a million years, when I began this campaign, I never, ever would have predicted this could happen. What has happened is we have, thank you. What has happened, and this is revolutionary. You know, when I talk about a political revolution, we've already accomplished this. We have received almost 5 million individual contributions. Anybody here know what the average contribution is?
$27.
$27.
How did I know? How did we know?
In other words, and this is revolutionary.
So now once he gets into office, he's just going to be doing what all those backers wanted him to do.
That's drug companies and Wall Street.
He's so beholden to all those $27 donors.
We are dependent on the working families of America, and I appreciate that.
But what if he has the answer to those 5 million people? Oh, right, that'd be great, wouldn't it? You know what? This guy has now become a pop culture, cult, etc. hero. Like,
of the people, by the people, and for the people.
like Mike Damascus was talking about, if he, goes easy on Hillary Clinton going forward, he could have some real power in her administration. That fundamentally misunderstands the nature of power, right? So I'll get back to that after this.
Too important to be dealt with by the media. And that is the issue of trade. Now I know, trade is not a sexy issue. It is not. I know. Media pays no attention to it at all. But here is what it amounts to.
Trump expanding his lead in Kentucky, 6-point lead now. Was just 6% reported.
Began entering into what I consider then disastrous trade agreements written by corporate America and the big money interests. What these agreements were about, that's called NAFTA and CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, the Colombian Trade Agreement, Korean Free Trade Agreement, all of these trade agreements were based on a certain basic premise. And that premise from corporate America was the following. Why would they want to pay workers in Michigan or Illinois or Ohio or Vermont $25, $30 an hour, a living wage, a middle class wage? Why would they want to negotiate with unions? Why would they want to obey environmental laws when they could shut down in America, move to Mexico, move to China, and exploit poor people all over the world? Everybody who had half a brain understood what these trade agreements were about. In the early 1990s, I was on picket lines with trade unionists in opposition to that.
When they came to the trade unionists, somebody stood up for them.
All of the fears that many of us had in opposing these agreements turned out to be true. Since 2001, 60,000 factories in America have shut down. Not all of it attributable to trade, but a lot of it. And regions like the Midwest, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois have been particularly hard hit. You have lost tens and tens of thousands of decent paying jobs. Corporations shut down, moved to China, moved to Mexico.
He's in Michigan.
I voted to help lead the opposition against every one of these disastrous trade agreements. Secretary Clinton voted for virtually all of them.
Why is he so voting? We'll talk about politics, talk about quote.
Distinguishes ourselves. And that is, everybody here knows that foreign policy is a huge, a very important part of what a president does.
He's a rock star now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's working that crowd.
Now, in 2002, when I was Vermont's congressman, I listened very carefully to what President Bush and Vice President Cheney and Don Rumsfeld.
Look at him working this crowd. It's the weekend at Bernie's, but he's not dead. He's killing the crowd.
The reason why we had to invade Iraq, etc. And I listened carefully because I knew that the decision that Congress reached would result in some people in my own state not coming back alive. I listened very carefully, and I ended up not believing what they said. I voted against the war in Iraq.
Wait, wouldn't her, whether she was right or wrong, be relevant in that experience? No, it's not.
Who was then in the Senate heard the same information that I did. That's in the House. She voted for the war. That war, as all of you know, turned out to be one of the worst foreign policy disasters in the modern history of America.
Now, her main defense of that is, to be fair to me, I was duped by George W. Bush. That's not a great defense.
Why didn't she ask Henry Kissinger if George Bush was lying?
I thought that she did a very good job. You guys know who Henry Kissinger is, right? Why one would look for approval from one of the worst, most destructive secretaries of state in the history of this country, I don't understand.
That's so central and telling.
Trust me.
She thinks it's perfectly normal to ask a monster like that for advice.
When that day
He thinks it's outrageous.
When that day comes, I know that I'll be doing something very wrong. Now, the reason that our campaign is doing as well as it is, we've come a long, long way. We started at 3% in the polls, and now we're closing in. Some national polls actually have had us ahead. And the reason that we are doing so well nationally and why I think we are going to win here in Michigan is because we are doing our best to listen to the people, not just wealthy campaign. We are listening to workers all over this country who tell me they cannot make it more $8 or $9 an hour. And that is why we are going to fight to end this absurd $7.25 minimum wage. Why we are going, good, you got it. Why we're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
It's not pragmatic. It's just we want less change. Less change.
Now we are listening to senior citizens. You don't read about this in the media also. But all over this country, you got seniors and disabled veterans, 75, 80, 90 years of age, trying to get by on $11,000 or $12,000 a year Social Security. And you know what? Nobody can get by on $11,000, $12,000 a year Social Security. A great nation is judged not by how many millionaires and billionaires it has, but by how it treats the most vulnerable among us.
To be judged by it, whether you comfort the afflicted and make
our seniors particularly
comfortable.
You comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable.
Yeah, thank you. Couldn't spit it out. And I was like, yeah.
That's
what right.
Well, I've got
and that's what Jesus.
Not only are we not going to cut those benefits,
and gee, I wonder who would do that. And the comfortable are afflicted by Bernie Sanders. They do not like it.
Veterans of this country who put their lives on the line to defend us, and they are telling us they want the health care and other benefits that they were promised, and we are going to give that to them. Throughout this campaign, in state after state, we have been listening to young people. And what young people are telling me is, why do we
I'm going to mention CNN here for 1 second. Yeah, we have them up on one of our monitors here. And it's so emblematic of what's going on. They have Bernie Sanders without volume.
How many
as a giant commercial runs in a bigger screen. I mean, how's that for capitalism?
That is like a metaphor for the times we're living in. Shut up the guy with the message of the commercials here.
That's right. Look at they are using Bernie Sanders to get people to watch the commercial next to him. But he wouldn't be good for ratings.
$300,000 in debt. A dentist in Iowa, $400,000 in debt. A guy in Nevada has been paying off his student debt for 25 years.
Even when he tells an anecdote like that, he does it so much more naturally than Martin O'Malley.
Now, what we have got to understand, we've got to think outside of the box. everybody here knows that education and learning is inherent in being a human being, right? Clearly, the goal
when he beats
of
his
America
brats
is
and
to make sure that all of our people get all of the education that they need and they want. That's not a radical idea. We should not be punishing people for getting an education. We should
she's actually going to bother doing it. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think she's not going to get rid of it in the general election.
That is why
She's not going to talk about it that much anymore. But I wonder if she makes any effort if she's president.
Number one, in the year
I think to propose
2016,
something that sounds like that, but
public education cannot just consist of first grade through 12th grade. That was a great idea historically. The world has changed. Today, in many respects, a college degree is the equivalent of what a high school degree was 50 years ago. You know, 50 years ago, somebody had a high school degree, they were doing really well, go out and get a great job. That is not the case today. That is why I believe that we have got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. Number two,
You would want this kind of enthusiasm in general.
young people and people not so young should not be forced to be paying off their student debt for decades. When that happens, literally people can't buy a car, they can't buy a home, they can't get married, they can't have kids. That's pretty crazy stuff. So what we have proposed is to allow people with student debt to refinance their loans at the lowest interest rates they can find, substantially reducing student debt.
By the way, if we have any results, we're going to get to you. Right now, we don't have any results from the Democratic
Now, when
race.
critics say to me, well, Bernie, that's a nice idea. You're Santa Claus, you're giving away all of this free stuff. How are you going to pay for it? I will tell you how we're going to pay for it. Look, and here is thinking outside of the box. When Wall Street, through their greed and recklessness and illegal behavior, helped destroy our economy, Congress bailed them out. I believe that right now we should impose a tax on Wall Street speculation, which brings in more than enough income to make public colleges,
Ted Cruz got 24 of the delegates in Kansas. Trump only 10. Rubio 5. Kasich 1. Trump now leads in the delegate race on the Republican side, 346 to 258. Rubio way behind at 118.
This campaign is listening to women. And what women are telling me all over this country is, why should I be working in an office across the room from some guy doing the same work as that guy, and I'm making 79 cents on the dollar compared to him?
I don't understand why it grows in favor of that policy.
And that gap is even wider for African American women. And that is why I know that every man in this room will stand with the women in the fight for pay equity.
I never told so many African American celebrities coming out in his favor is ever going to have an effect. I mean, T.I., Spike Lee.
This campaign is listening to young
I wonder how much
couples
celebrity
with little
endorsements
babies.
ever matter. I'm sure it does.
And look, every psychologist
Ben
knows
Jealous.
is the most important
And
years
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
development.
Ta-Nehisi Coates. Yeah.
Is that right?
Bill Alexander.
Now, if that is the case, why should it be that working couples all over this country are finding it extremely difficult to find quality, affordable childcare?
I really wonder what Hillary Clinton is going to do.
We can create.
Like, what would she focus on? I don't know. I literally don't know.
That's what I asked
by
people.
making sure that our
Breaking
kids
down
have well-educated, well-trained.
We're going to build on the progress.
taking
We're
care
going to build on the progress.
By doing what?
Building.
What's smaller? To talk about.
And this campaign is listening to our Latino brothers and sisters.
We're kidding about Hillary building a wall, put down the tweets.
And they are saying they are tired of living in fear and that they want to see, as I do, comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward in America today, a whole lot of people who are very, very angry. And they have a right to be angry. But what we have to understand is that we take out our anger on those people who are responsible for the problems, not scapegoat minorities.
Become a historical figure in this election. Because it's not just about a candidate who's done well. It's about a tidal wave of change that's coming, and that for the moment being, he represents.
Yes.
Almost all new income and wealth being created in America.
The Trump supporter who thinks KKK is a liberal organization is on CNN tonight.
Yeah.
Giving really analysis.
Oh my God! So we got to get that guy's opinion.
1/10 of 1%.
Hey, somebody, how is that not the first and last question that you asked?
So hey, somebody thinks the sun will
People are angry.
He's doing that thing, you know.
In this country.
Yeah. And they're all shutting up while he talks.
America, bottom 50%. What we have got to do.
Isn't that funny? Bernie Sanders speaking. They're not taking him.
And they're having him talk.
Yeah, I know why they're not taking Sanders' speech, but instead, right now, there's a Trump maniac
Now, a few weeks ago, I visited privately.
He won't. He's a tough guy. He takes it. Yeah, he's taking it from me, man. And maybe you'll ask him. I'll give that to Crystal when he was and he responds to me, so I'll give that to him. I don't think he actually knows what he's wrong. Honestly. I don't think he knows. So it makes me dislike him less.
Who has a 9-year-old daughter who until several years ago was a vivacious, outgoing, bright girl who did very, very well in school. Today,
I'll tell you, Bernie can carry a speech, though. I mean, he's like, if you let him go, he might speak the rest of the night.
Yeah.
I hope I have 10% energy he does at 74.
I know.
Jeez.
When you are a senator, you meet with all kinds of
How did he not get sick this whole campaign?
That's what I was thinking. I got sick. I went to Des Moines. Hank and I both came home sick.
left people as shattered as I was listening to the pain of what was going on in Flint. And really what I felt is I could not believe that I was listening to people who were living in the United States of America in the year 2016. This sounded like people in a third world desperate country. So what we are going to do, well, number one, as many of you know, I think when you have that kind of dereliction in duty, I think the governor should do the right thing and resign.
Believe me, he's moving on the numbers. We'll let you guys know.
that if the local government does not have the resources, if the state government doesn't have the willingness, then the federal government has got to step in and make But when we talk about Flint, while Flint may be the worst example of a collapsing infrastructure, it is not the only example. Here's the truth. The truth is that all over this country, we have water systems that are failing, wastewater plants. In my state, many of the bridges that we have are in massive needs of repair. Roads falling apart, rail system way behind other countries, airports, levees, and dams. And that is why I believe that we should rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. We can. And when we invest $1 trillion in our water systems and our roads and our bridges, we can create up to 13 million good-paying jobs. Now, once again, I am being attacked. Bernie, $1 trillion. My goodness, a lot of money. How are you going to pay for it? I'll tell you how we pay for it. Right now, you have major corporations in this country making billions of dollars in profit, stashing their profits in the Cayman Islands, Bermuda.
Hey, Bernie, get that money back for us.
Given year, not paying a nickel in federal income tax. Together, we are losing as a nation about $100 billion every year. Together, we're going to end that outrageous loophole. They're going to pay their taxes. We use that money, rebuild our infrastructure.
I like that line. I think you should use this line more. You pay your taxes. It's past time they paid their taxes. Right?
Now, Republican candidates for president, governor, Senate, House, they go around the country and they tell us how much they believe in family values. They just love families. But I want everybody here to understand what they mean by family values, and what they mean is that no woman in this room, in this state, in this country should have the right to control her own body. I disagree. What they mean by family values is that our gay brothers and sisters should not be able to be married. I disagree.
Maine has been called for Ted Cruz. Maine goes to Cruz in a big upset. We'll talk more about that in a minute as well.
We believe in family values, but they're not Republican family values. And when I talk about family values,
Maine has been called.
The international embarrassment of the United States being the only major country on earth without paid family and medical leave.
I thought he was against it.
There is legislation in Congress that I want to see passed. 3 months paid family and medical leave.
Ice Cream Socialist tweets in, so my mom was pissed the TV wasn't playing Bernie's speech, and now she's watching. Hashtag TYT Live. Goddamn right. Sorry.
On energy.
Sorry for the cursing.
I have talked to scientists all over our country and all over the world.
Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell Randy Gonzalez.
Climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity. Climate change is already doing devastating harm in our country today and around the world. And here's also what the scientists tell us. If we do not get our act together very quickly, this planet, our only planet, will be between 5 and 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer by the end of the century. And that means That means more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more rising sea levels flooding coastal regions, more acidification of the ocean, and more international conflict as people fight over limited natural resources.
The Republicans won't shut up about the acidification of the ocean.
Moral responsibility to leave this planet in a way that is healthy and habitable for our kids and our grandchildren. And that is why I believe we have got to work with China, Russia, India, countries all over the world, and have the courage to take on the fossil fuel industry and transform. One of the issues that the media does not talk about at all.
I like his attacks on the media, though.
And it really is an embarrassment. Look, I have conservative friends. I disagree. They believe what they believe. I believe what I believe. But in this issue of climate change, you do not have not had one Republican candidate for president prepared to listen to the scientists. I mean, and this is really scary stuff, because you can't do public policy unless it is based on science. And this really is, the whole world looks at us and they're saying, what is going on here? As all of you know, Donald Trump is the greatest of everything. Everything he does is great and big and extraordinary. Now, among his many other attributes, you didn't know this, he is one of the world's great scientists. He's a modest guy, he didn't want to share that with you, but that's the case. And Donald Trump has concluded that climate change is a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese.
Who's the better comedian, TYT Bull right now, Bernie Sanders or Jimmy Dore?
Oh, come on, that's not fair.
We will. Trust me, we will.
Let's welcome back to the guy. Jesus Christ will get you right up.
Now, I'm not sure.
I'll kick his ass.
Republicans. Okay.
I'll take him off.
But that
I'll kick his ass at big
perpetrated
guys.
by the Chinese shotgun.
Oh, you're just trying to win the poll.
Perpetrated by the Mexicans or the Muslims or anybody else. Yeah. But bottom line is we are going to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel.
Will marginally head in that direction as well, along the lines of Barack Obama.
Big, we also have to address another issue. I'm criticized for this, and that's fine. Every major country on earth, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Holland, Italy, Canada, Scandinavia, every single country on earth, major country, provides health care to all people.
Listen, I think Jimmy mentioned this earlier. Then why does it work in every other developed country?
How can we possibly do something that Germany does? We couldn't. Canada does it. How could we do it? England, France. How did they do it? It's a mystery how they do it.
Now, the Affordable Care Act, in my view, has done some very important things. We've done away with this obscenity called pre-existing conditions.
Then why are you trying to
We have expanded health insurance to more than 17 million people. And we have ended discrimination in terms of premium costs for women who are being charged more than that. But today, despite the gains of the ACA, 29 million Americans still have no health insurance. Many of you are underinsured with high deductibles and co-payments, right? And all of you and every American is paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs because we are being ripped off by an extremely greedy pharmaceutical industry. And then to add insult to injury, we end up paying far more per capita for healthcare than do the people of any other country on earth. We spend almost 3 times more than the British, 50% more than the French. And that is why I believe, I've been criticized for saying it, so let me say it again. I believe that healthcare is a right for all people.
A couple of days ago, saying it cost plan would cost $15 billion, omitting the fact that it saves the country $20 trillion. So that would be a $5 trillion benefit, but that was not the headline.
That is why I will do my best to move this country to a Medicare for all healthcare program. One of the arguments being waged against it is, well, Bernie is a nice guy. Bernie's a nice guy, but he just can't win. One of the arguments is that Bernie can't win. We need a medic. We need a medic. Somebody. Thank you. All right, let's get a medic out there.
Whereas at a Trump rally, they would yell, "Somebody beat the shit out of that guy!"
Medics here,
That's some black people.
Trained personnel here.
Get him out!
Okay, let's get.
Get him out! Somebody's sick. Get him out! Get him out!
Let's keep it down.
Is that interesting that they have at a Trump rally they keep calling for security, and Bernie's calling for a medic. He's talking about healthcare, and then somebody right. Like, you think the other politicians? Well, I don't know. Maybe they will, but I just can't see Trump stopping his rally to help someone. There's some chance he might have been Trump is now Alright, Trump might win responsibility for that, so that would put things in good.
I just want to say, let's see how it goes. Electability. First thought, polls go up and down, but almost all of the national polls and state polls that have put me up against Donald Trump has us winning and winning big.
Last poll I saw, he's winning by 12 against Trump. To be fair, Hillary Clinton was winning by 8, but he has the larger lead. Hillary Clinton losing to Cruz by 1, Sanders leading by 17 points. And he's beating Cruz by 17.
But more important than polls, I will tell you why, together, we will beat Trump. We will beat Trump because the American people do not want a president who insults Mexicans, and all of Latin America, who are our closest neighbors. The American people do not want a president who insults Muslims, one of the largest religions. The American people do not want a president who insults women, or a president who insults African Americans. All of you should remember, please do not forget that Trump was one of the leaders of the so-called birther movement trying to delegitimize the President of the United States. I always have found it interesting that they went after President Obama because his father was born in Kenya. My father was born in Poland. Nobody asked me for my birth certificate.
This is such a great point. Yeah. Like, how come they don't ask? How come they don't ask?
To do with the color of my skin, I don't know.
It's not like the Republicans don't hate Bernie
We
Sanders.
will defeat Donald Trump because the American people know that togetherness, standing together, trumps divisiveness. The American people know that community helping each other trumps selfishness. And most importantly, the American people know, and every religion teaches us this, that love trumps hatred.
Bernie Sanders' morality is unrealistic. Trump's hatred, that's unrealistic. Vote for Hillary.
On Tuesday, Michigan has an enormously important primary. If we will win that primary, if the voter turnout is high, let's make it a high turnout. Thank you all.
That is actually very, very true. I want to build upon that right now, actually. So, people always talk about if there's a bigger voter turnout, we'll win, yada, yada. So you hear that from politicians. I've heard it for over 20 years, right? In this rare case, it's enormously true because there's polling that of likely voters and registered voters. So in a lot of the polls where they just ask registered Democrats which way they're going to go, if it's an open caucus or primary, and then if they include independents who are likely to vote in the Democratic primary, Bernie Sanders wins comfortably. If independents are not allowed to vote and it's a closed primary or caucus, and they ask registered voters, Bernie Sanders in a lot of cases wins narrowly. If they ask likely voters, Hillary Clinton wins. So part of the reason for that is that older voters are more reliable voters, right? And Hillary Clinton happens to be doing better among older voters. Bernie Sanders happens to be doing better among younger voters. So if just the same old people vote, and I don't mean old as in denigrating old folks, okay, I mean the same usual people vote as they do in any election, then the polling is likely to be right and Hillary Clinton will win. But if you are registered and you actually show up and vote when you don't always do that, well then Bernie Sanders is likely to win. So in this case, whether you show up and vote makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And so if you don't show up and vote, and your candidate, whatever it happens to be, whichever one it happens to be, doesn't win, well, not only can you not say anything about that, it's actually definitively your fault. Okay, so and people will tell you that on TV in every election and get you numb to it. And it's really not true in every election. Okay, but it is true in this election, and it's also not true in every state. But in the states that are close, I've now seen poll after poll. Look, registered voters go to Bernie. If you go to likely voters, they go to Hillary Clinton, right? So you can make all the difference in whichever state you're in. Okay, so that's my public service announcement for the day. Now, there's a thousand things we have to talk about as this day is developing, right? So already Kansas has been called for Ted Cruz. Maine has been called for Ted Cruz. Now, somebody wrote in here about LePage, right? Here's a live tweet. Natalie writing in at hashtag TYT Live. Maine voted for crazy Paul LePage twice. Now, that's true, but crazy Paul LePage endorsed Donald Trump. And Donald Trump had the lead in Maine. And so for him to lose in a Republican primary after LePage endorses him and he had the lead, that is not a good sign for Donald Trump. Now, in Kentucky, if he'd also lost that, then you'd have to panic if you're in the Trump campaign. As it stands, he's got about a 9-point lead in Kentucky. Now just about 10% reporting. So
11 now. 19% reporting.
Oh, 19% reporting, 11-point lead. So that looks like it's a lot more comfortable. He'll probably pull out Kentucky. If the polling is right, he'll pull out Louisiana. But let me just give one more note on the Republicans there, which is important. It's also important in the Democratic context. But in a lot of these states, it's closed primaries, including in Louisiana, where it's a primary for the Republicans and it's closed. That means independents cannot vote there. Okay? When independents can vote, Trump does better. In closed primaries, where it's just Republicans voting, Cruz does better.
Yeah.
So that's why Louisiana is not a foregone conclusion yet. It is possible that Cruz can outperform his polling based on the fact that it's a closed primary in Louisiana. And by the way, whenever it's closed primaries or caucuses for the Democrats, Hillary Clinton does better because Bernie Sanders attracts independents more. Which is, I suppose, ironic if you're in the mainstream media because you keep telling us Bernie Sanders is less electable. If the guy who has clear, overwhelming advantage with independents is unelectable, then I'm not sure you understand what the word unelectable means. Okay, yeah. So, and Bernie Sanders was right in his speech when he pointed out, yes, he's got a 12-point lead on Donald Trump. To be fair, Hillary Clinton has an 8-point lead in the same poll against Trump. Not as big as Bernie Sanders, but a solid lead against Donald Trump. But she loses to Rubio in that poll. She loses to Cruz by 1 in that poll, whereas Bernie Sanders crushes Rubio and beats Cruz by 17 points. I'm not sure I've ever seen a difference that large among two different candidates in a primary, where one is losing to a candidate and the other one is landsliding him, right? Yeah. So who's more electable, if you care about that, is not an open question according to the polling right now. Not an open question. I've never seen polling as clear as this in any primary. Bernie Sanders is definitively, if you care about science, definitively the more electable candidate. If you care about pundits on TV's gut and what Washington reaction is, then go ahead and close your mind to science. Well, while you're at it, you might want to join the Republicans because they've got the war on science going on, right? And say, no, despite all available evidence, I'm going to pretend that Hillary Clinton is more electable, when the facts do not support that at all. Okay, that's just clear. Yes, John.
One other factor that we should bear in mind for these results is that this is the first big election day with Carson not in anymore. And so we'd been talking previously about where his supporters would go, and so I looked into it, and there have been polls that do sort of second choice polling, and they found that the most go to Cruz, but it's only a little bit more than go to Trump, and then the majority of the rest of them go to Kasich. And so basically it mostly just hurts Rubio, because once you factor in that he only had like 6 points of supporters in most states on average, then you probably give 2 points to Cruz, 2 points to Trump, 1 point to Kasich. Only Rubio really hurts from that. It doesn't really change the Cruz-Trump map all that much.
So I saw a different result. And I looked into it as well. And look, that's why we talk about registered likely voters, etc. The polling sometimes can seem like it's all over the map. You got to get more polls to just give a full context here. So in the results that I saw, most of the voters were going more definitively, most of the Carson voters, to Ted Cruz. Okay, so the second was Trump, but Cruz had a big lead on him in terms of voters more likely, Carson voters more likely to go to Cruz. But I saw the same thing in terms of Rubio. That Rubio
doesn't pick up.
Like, yeah, if you're a Ben Carson voter, you got no interest in Marco Rubio. Part of the reason for that is Marco Rubio is, at this point, the establishment candidate. And if you were interested in Ben Carson, one of the reasons was because you were definitely not interested in the establishment or a regular politician. And it doesn't get any more regular politician than Marco Rubio. So there's a lot of logic in that. So you might have liked Carson because he's an outsider, and you might go to Trump. You might have liked him because he's religious, and you might go to Cruz, right? Or maybe some combination thereof. But there's really not much reason you could go to Rubio, and the polling bears that out. So with Carson's 5 to 7% that he was getting in states being divvied up by Cruz and Trump, as what we're seeing here, again, it's not a huge factor because it's only 5 to 7%, but it is further confirming everything else we've seen in the results today and in results before, which is that Rubio is almost, look, we got to talk about this more as the night goes on, but he's almost getting eliminated. I mean, it's that strong, right?
Although, again, in the way that it's sort of shaking up, I still think it's most likely that Trump is probably going to win a clear majority. All Rubio really needs to do is cut into the delegates that he gets in a couple of states for him to serve his purpose. And because Rubio is, as we keep pointing out, like Cruz, although in a different way, he's got a bit broader of a base of being bought out by people, he will do his job. And if he's told behind the scenes, look, you're clearly not going to win, but we need you to keep running so that you can take this state, take more of this state, then he'll have done his job. I think he's willing to do that.
Yeah. So it's maybe a matter of whether they think the establishment would rather have Rubio still stay in there and get some delegates that they can use the convention, or they go, you know what, we give up. the establishment candidate's not going to win. That's the Republican voters are not in that mood. As Lindsey Graham recently said, "Oh my God, it might have to be Cruz," and the establishment might pull that shoot. And so, look, one of the things we do on this show is we try to get behind the scenes and decode politics for you, right? So here's what I'm on the lookout for, and I'm going to tell you as soon as we have it. I don't mean tonight. I mean as the race goes on, which is if you start to see donors that didn't normally give to Ted Cruz start opening the spigot for Cruz, then it's likely over. The Rubio is done. They're going to turn all their energy to Cruz to try to get him elected instead of Trump. It hasn't happened yet, but if that does happen and we start to see signs of it, I mean, what are you going to see that on CNN? They don't talk about money in politics almost at all, ever. What are you going to see it on Fox News? On Fox News, that's the thing they want to cover up the most, right?
I'm sure Les Moonves will do a big thing about it.
Yes, Les Moonves, the guy who runs CBS, said Trump might be bad for the country, but he's great for ratings. And of course, a lot of the money in politics gets funneled back into television. So that's why they don't mind any of the money in politics. That's why they never talk about it. MSNBC almost never talks about it, right? So,
the ironic thing about that statement is that by saying that, it shows that he is bad for the country. Because he has a job. You know, the media is supposed to serve a certain role, historically.
Mm-hmm. And so we track that for you guys, not just because we care about it, not just because it's the most important issue in the country, but because it's also an indicator of which way the results are going to go, right? So we've talked a lot about that in the past. We'll talk about it more later as well, but we've got a ton of stuff to get to here. Jimmy asked something while we were watching Bernie's speech. Now, we got to keep it real here, and I got to give you some numbers and see if you can pull up Michigan, John. Yeah, I've got that. I have it already. Okay, so as this night begins, and the Democratic votes are not in yet, but they're close to closing those polls, and then we'll have results for you guys. Bernie Sanders stands a very good chance of winning 3 out of 4 states this weekend, right? Now, he's not guaranteed those victories, and Hillary Clinton has a better chance of winning Louisiana than Bernie Sanders has of winning the states. He's likely to win Kansas, Nebraska, and Maine. So if she pulls off an upset in one of those states, well, then more momentum goes towards Hillary Clinton. You got to keep it real. That's what would happen if that is the scenario. Now, unfortunately, if he has the momentum and he wins those 3 out of 4 states, no one in the media will give him credit. I've already seen article on top of article saying that, well, those are more likely to be Bernie states, and they're caucuses, and caucuses are weird, and these are particularly weird caucuses, and so all the reasons why it should be dismissed. In fact, I've seen a ton of coverage about the Republican elections in this weekend, justifiably. They're very interesting. There was an upset in Maine. There's nothing wrong with that. They should cover those, right? But almost no coverage of the Democratic side. You almost think, if you're scrolling through the websites, you'd almost think there wasn't a Democratic election this week, right? So, but yes, the Democratic Party is holding elections. Yes, Bernie Sanders is favored in them. But it appears that as soon as they're over, they're going to be immediately dismissed, right? Now, it's one thing if you say, oh, the southern states that Hillary Clinton won on Super Tuesday, which was almost all the states she won, right? She won Massachusetts by a very tiny margin, 1.4%. 1.4, I think. Right? But she won it by a million. Right, but the rest were southern states. Those, they matter a lot. She won Super Tuesday. She's inevitable, back on the track. It's definitely not. Bernie wins 3 out of 4. Dismiss. That's if he wins it, by the way. So there is no good case scenario for him in the media. Like, if he wins, we knew he was going to win. By the way, they haven't happened yet. If you go to Nate Silver, you go to ask the others, are you positive he's going to win those 3 states? They would say, no, we're not positive, right? But the minute he wins them, they're going to be like, oh, we knew it. We knew it. It's irrelevant. It's useless, right? So that disparity is maddening. Okay. Now, having said all that, previously we had all the polls going in Bernie Sanders' direction, including all the national polls, and he'd made up about a 50-point difference, which is unbelievable for a guy who had almost no name recognition for people that didn't follow politics, versus Hillary Clinton that had the name recognition in about 100% of the country, right?
And a guy taking no corporate money.
And he doesn't take any corporate money, and how in the world did he catch up? That being said, recently, there have been national polls going in the other direction, with Hillary Clinton expanding her lead in some of those polls. So that is the case, and that is for the first time momentum going in her way over the last couple of weeks or so, okay? Now, and the wins she had on Super Tuesday were huge. as some people are prone to say. They were larger than expected. I mean, we expected large wins for her. They were even larger than that. Okay,
like
also in South Carolina and in Nevada. We thought maybe it could be a tie and Bernie Sanders might even be able to win, but no, she won comfortably by 5. It wasn't a blowout, but she clearly won there. Okay,
but he was down by about 60 points in July in Nevada, and he loses by 5 points. My question is, you tell me who has momentum.
Okay, I hear you, Jimmy. But at some point, you got to win states, and he is. He wins a lot of states. He won 4 on Super Tuesday, which again was immediately dismissed. Right? He won New Hampshire in a blowout.
Well, you got to round down. Right. 7 goes up to 10, 4 goes down to 0. So.
Right. That's what I learned. And this weekend, it looks like he's going to win some states. But the question is, Jimmy, does that momentum then lead him to actually winning the later states? And that question is going to be resolved one way or another on March 8th and March 15th. And this is what I've been saying for a long time on the Young Turks. March 15th is the most important date, not Super Tuesday. I said that at least a month ago, right? So there we have Florida, Illinois, Ohio, Missouri, and North Carolina. And on March 8th, we have Michigan. Right now in the polls, Bernie Sanders is trailing significantly in those states. Now, will that momentum carry him to better numbers? That was the theory. If that theory holds, then yes, he's in great shape. But if that theory doesn't hold and she maintains those leads, well, then it will be over. It is what it is, right? You have to call it as it actually is, not as you hope it is. So now, given that long prelude, where do we stand on Michigan right now?
Okay, so there have been 2 polls done in Michigan on the Democratic side so far in March. The most recent one from ARG has her up by 24. The one before that, which was Fox 2 Detroit Mitchell, had her up by 28.
So you gotta
pretty comfortable.
You gotta be realistic, man. There's not a lot of time before March 8th. It's coming up on Tuesday, and if those are anywhere near true, that's way too big a lead.
Yeah, and honestly, look, the PPP back in the around right in the halfway point in February had her up by 10.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like it's going in the other direction, as I was saying about the national polls. Whereas Bernie was closing in before, now the tide has swung a little bit in the opposite direction.
Looking at it, I would say that their poll is an outlier. His polls right before and after had her up by 29 or 33.
Right, but I've seen other states as well where it seems like she's gained some. Now, if you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, you say, well, that's partly because the media keeps screaming at every rooftop they have that it's over, she's inevitable, we quit already, etc., etc. Well, you're right about that, but nonetheless, they did do that, and he's got to win the states, and if he doesn't win the states, it will be over. So, has the media treatment of Bernie Sanders been fundamentally unfair? I think I would be the leading proponent of that argument. That notwithstanding, it is what it is. And so right now, as things stand, unless Bernie Sanders can regain the momentum and have some upsets going forward, he's going to be in a world of trouble. Yeah, right? Because the polling in those March 15 states don't look that good either. Yeah, right? I kept waiting because there used to have the old polls. And I dismissed the old polls because I said, look, man, that was before Iowa, New Hampshire, and all the other things that have happened. But the newer polls cannot be dismissed, right? And so we're going to have to see some movement there. Otherwise, there's going to be trouble by March 15th. Yeah, keeping it real, that's where we stand now. But also, it depends on if people go to show up to vote, as I said earlier, right? Registered voters, likely voters, that makes a big difference.
You keep saying this thing about March 15th, that this will be first of all, Bernie's got a shit ton of money. He's not getting out after March 15th, no matter how March 15th turns out. Because after March 15th, the calendar totally switches in his favor. And, I mean, what do you think happens when if she wins this on super delegates? Well,
No.
I'm not.
Well, basically, one of the reasons I'm not saying that I think that necessarily March 15th is like do or die, but it's even if you think that gradually at this point he'll continue to have more support, the polls will be more in his favor. Each week that we go by is more and more people have already been exposed to his information, so it becomes a little bit harder for that to happen. And because there aren't big winner-take-all states, at a certain point, if he doesn't catch up and pass her, as long as she can get 45% of the delegates, then she can win. She could lose all the states, as long as she loses them close. At a certain point, it doesn't even matter if she wins the states anymore, just because of the delegate lead.
I'm going to say it one more time. Those states have not voted yet, okay? And we thought Trump was going to win comfortably in Maine today, and it turns out he got beat pretty badly.
Yeah.
So many things can happen, right? Now, having said that, Jimmy, you look, if he loses Michigan, and then he's very likely to lose North Carolina no matter what. But again, we'll see. But I'm being realistic. Then the more up in the state, Florida, Ohio, Illinois, which I consider to be up in the air more, based on the older poll. If he loses those, now two things are going to happen. One, the math that John is talking about is going to be very, very hard to catch up, if not nearly impossible. Right? The second thing is, if you thought the media was dismissive now, wait till you see them after March 15th. If it goes in that direction, and at that point they would have some justification to do it, okay? They won't be talking about New York or California. They won't be talking about any polling in any of those states. They'll just, every mention of Bernie Sanders will almost contain a dismissive and disdainful hiss. Like, what is he still doing in the race?
Is this the day
What
he
is
gets out?
wrong with him? And then you'll have a cacophony of people saying he's just helping the Republicans by staying in the race. Now, having said that, he's got every right to do it. He's got plenty of money. And guess what? As we're talking live, he just won the state of Kansas.
Wow.
We're just calling it right now. Bernie Sanders won the state of Kansas. I'm getting this from CNN. Immediately dismissed. It turns out it doesn't count. It's too white. It's too weird. And it's too pro-Bernie.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing.
I'm sorry, Joe. One more thing on that. How funny is it that the press now says, well, it's obvious that the most liberal senator in the country would win one of the most conservative states in the nation?
It's obvious.
Now, I know, of course, it's the Democrats voting in the Democratic primary. It's not all of Kansas. But you would think that conservative states would be more in favor of conservative Democrats, right? But the guy who's by far the most, they say he's too socialist, he's too far left, and obviously he was going to win Kansas.
It's not that it's irrelevant that he won. It's that it's weird.
It's weird.
It's weird. So let's not think about it or talk about it all. Look, and as of from the 19th of February to the 26th of February, a week-long period, the last poll had clinched up by 10.
In Kansas?
As of about 2.5 weeks ago, yeah.
In Kansas?
Yeah. And yes, that's the only poll that I'm seeing.
And as soon as Kansas polls closed, it was called for Bernie Sanders, meaning that he crushed. He won easily. There's no dispute.
So
you don't have to worry about precincts report.
So what happened? The polls were wrong, or
well, it's a caucus, and he's expected that he should do well in caucuses. Yeah, he's got a great ground game. He has money to run ads pretty much anywhere, so he could be sort of. I mean, he doesn't really need to be selective, but he can drench the marketplace in the weeks leading up. Yeah, and it's been a few weeks since the polls. It's possible a combination of little factors. Now, I had seen people giving some of the early individual precinct results, implying that he was going to win throughout the last couple of hours. And some people were showing in some particular precincts oddly high numbers of absentee ballots coming in only for one side. So at one point, so Hillary, they had the absentee and then the regular. So in the regular, Bernie had like 280, she had like 240. So he beat her. And then the absentee, he had like 39 votes, she had 260 votes.
Now, I saw online, and again, look, this is, who knows? Look, it's just, take this with a giant grain of salt.
Yeah.
But I saw people saying that the Hillary Clinton people are going to the nursing homes, knowing that the older voters are more likely to vote for Hillary Clinton, and passing out, absentee ballots at the nursing homes. And people think that's a dirty trick.
No, I think that's fine.
So.
I think it's fine.
I think that's good, hard politics, right? If you think that
it's a legal vote, it's a legal vote.
Yeah, Bernie could go and pass out absentee ballots at universities. So I don't get into that. And besides, she won Kansas easily. So last thing on this is, look, if that Kansas poll that John just told you about gives you all you need to know on both sides of this issue. On the one side, and not both sides of the issue, but the two different things we've been talking about. On the one side is this media bias. Now, and you can see, we just called it right now as we're covering it live, right? Now, you'll see tomorrow what the press does. And you'll go look at it, whatever sites you go to all the general sites, whatever you want, right? And they will say, oh, well, Bernie was always going to win Kansas. Even though there was a poll out 2 weeks ago, the last poll we had in Kansas, saying she's up by 10. They'll say it, watch. I'm telling you ahead of time, right? And so that when you see it with your own eyes, you'll say, oh my God, he was right. He did tell us ahead of time, right? They will say, oh, he was always going to win Kansas. When he was losing by 10 points 2 weeks ago, according to the poll, right? So that's phenomenon number one. And phenomenon number two is, look, if he's losing by 10 or whatever he is, and they vary widely, right? In Ohio or Illinois or Florida, well, is it possible that in 10 days that polling could also be off and there could be momentum shifts, especially if he wins 3 out of 4 in this weekend? And by the way, that's why the media coverage is important. If they say, oh my God, Bernie Sanders won 3 out of 4, it seems like he's got momentum. If they go, oh, he won 3 out of 4, but it's don't worry about it, then he won't have momentum, right? Or as much momentum as he deserves. So we'll have to see. But we're here to share the facts with you guys so you know what's actually going on. Okay? All right. Now, that's the polling. Jimmy, are you depressed or excited?
I say I'm not listening to what you're saying, and I just know that after March 15th, it favors Bernie, and we need to change things in a big way. We need a revolution in this country, or it's going to get really dark. I think that there will be. A lot of people are saying that there's going to be another bank crash, and it's going to be worse than the last one. And so, what will happen then? Who knows? Will Occupy Wall Street, lead to real people in the streets doing things? I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, if your house goes down to being worth nothing again, what are people? Once people don't have much to lose, which is what a lot of people feel right now, which I think is why Donald Trump has such big support, because people feel like I don't have anything to lose, and I've been sticking by this trickle-down economics ever since Ronald Reagan told me it was good for me 30 years ago. And holy cow, we're in a much worse place than we were as workers 30 years ago. And the only one who's really addressing me is Donald Trump and this socialist, crazy Jewish guy. So I'll go with Donald Trump. I mean, I think that we're at that point right now. That's how bad things are. So I really, I don't know. I'm not using my rational mind, maybe, but I really think I am, because I feel like it.
At least he's being honest about that too. Okay, I saw a great tweet which I retweeted today about how it's been trickling down on the rich and the powerful have been pissing on our heads for like 30 years, and the mainstream media has been telling us it's raining.
Yes,
right. It's raining down prosperity on us.
So
well, you know that's not what's happening.
I also saw, just real quick, to bolster what I just said, was that in the last 30 years. Our productivity, it used to be productivity was tied to wages in America, right? If you guys produced more, the company made more money, everybody made more money. That's not how it's been since Ronald Reagan and that Laffer curve and supply side trickle down economics. In fact, they love to say people who are against Bernie Sanders or his brand of socialism, they'll have a cute remark to say, "How much of someone else's money are you entitled to?" Well, that's not what we're talking about. If you look at what the workers have produced over the last 30 years, our productivity has gone up like 72%, and wages have gone up 9%. You tell me who's the parasite.
Yeah, and then I could flip that question around and say, how much of the American workers' productivity are you entitled to if you're in the top 1%, right? How come you're taking their money, right? But notice the mainstream media never frames it that way.
Never.
So instead you have Chris Cuomo at a town hall with Bernie Sanders saying, why are you going to punish the rich? Punish the rich. He literally said it 4 times in one question. But they never asked the Republicans, how come you're punishing the middle class by robbing them of their productivity and instead of giving it to them in wages, giving it to the top executives? How come they never asked that question?
And they never asked, how are you going to pay for this carpet bombing? How are you going to pay for all this war? How are you going to pay for all this stuff? How are you going to pay whenever Republican says we need to rebuild the military, even though we all know we're spending more in the military than the rest of the next 8 countries combined, none of those moderators ever say, how are you going to pay for that? They only say, how are you going to pay for that if one of your programs actually helps people?
So really fast, I'm looking at 538, so Nate Silver has a post up about Bernie winning Kansas. And so he automatically starts saying, is this fitting into the pattern of the other states he's won, because Kansas is white? But is it liberal? And he says, of course Kansas is not liberal, you're saying. Kansas hasn't voted Democrat for president since 1964. I wonder if he had a version of that for the southern states that voted for Hillary. Probably not. But then he says, but Kansas also doesn't have that many Democrats, period, which means the ones who vote may nevertheless be fairly liberal. I think that there being fewer of them means that they feel some sort of need to make up for it by being especially liberal. That doesn't necessarily make sense to me. That doesn't mean that they can't be liberal. And again, the only poll that we had shows her winning. So why did that That didn't mean anything. If Hillary was to win with the polls showing she should win, it's amazing for Hillary. But if he comes from behind and wins, they were probably secretly really liberal to begin with.
No, this is
and really fast. A larger point. I saw a poll, his post earlier today, where he has his thing where he has that big chart of if they're running the same nationally, here's how much I say they should each win the states. I could be missing something. I don't remember them doing that for any other race ever. It's
oh my God,
side,
great point.
And I haven't seen it for the Democratic side. First of all, if they were running even nationally, the polls seem to show that they are effectively running even nationally. And by the way, I understand that you can break down the demographics of a state in comparison to the national numbers, but that doesn't mean that it's the same as simply taking a random number from around the country and then putting them in a state. There are still state-specific differences. I don't think that he knows way more about statistics than me. He's done this way more than me.
No.
But I remain unconvinced that whole if they were running even means anything. It seems like a way to discount all of his wins by saying, well, I said a week ago he should win by 20, even though the only polls available said that he was going to lose by 10.
So I have great respect for Nate Silver.
I still do, even with what I just said.
Hold on. And in 2012, I was the one guy defending him against all the dumbass pundits with their stupid guts, right? Scar would be like, oh my God, I've been in politics long time, my gut says Nate Silver's math is wrong. Right? That doesn't mean anything. You're being an idiot, right? But I give him no deference because I also have eyes and I'm a liberal, so I can do math, right? So it's not like I'm confused by the statistics or by the math. And so if I think he's correct, and I've said that probably in this election, probably still 8 out of 10 times, but no problem saying that, of course, right? But he's also a human being, and he also has biases. And what John just read to you was a perfect example of it, right? So that wasn't math, that wasn't statistics. Here's a guy who's supposed to be all about the polling. Hillary Clinton wins the last poll at 10 points that was taken, and instead he turns it around in something about a nonsense theory that isn't tied to any math or any numbers about if there is a smaller number of liberals in a state, they're more likely to be liberals. Really, Nate? Yeah. Really? Show me some numbers on that. No, you made that up. Now, why is he making that up, right? Because as I've maintained throughout this election, and it's because I read him, and I largely still respect him, but I read him and I go, wait a minute, the numbers aren't saying the same thing you're writing, right? And so, is Nate Silver think, like everybody else in Washington and New York, Bernie Sanders can't win, he can't win, so I'm going to find a way to show you that he can't win so I can be right? Not as much as other people, but a little bit, because that theory right there that John read to you is not based on any fact. I've never heard that anywhere, and he has no numbers to back it up.
Maybe he'll provide some in a future post, live coverage, but I'll be watching, but currently I don't see it.
He doesn't have any numbers on
Well, if you guys, that's why my money's always on Nate Silver and the mental gymnastics. He's great at the mental gymnastics. That was crazy what Johnny just read to me. If Johnny's not making that up, that was nuts.
Yeah,
I did think.
That's what I thought.
Read that again, because I want.
Yes, I want you to read that again too.
Look, it's not that long. I can read the entire thing.
Yes,
if you want.
please do.
Kansas was just called for Bernie Sanders by the Kansas Democratic Party, and it's worth asking whether it fits the pattern of other states Sanders has won. Kansas is white, of course, but is it liberal? Of course Kansas is not liberal, you're saying, even if there is a liberal Kansas, the city, liberal Kansas. Kansas hasn't voted Democrat for president since 1964, but Kansas, this paragraph's pretty big. But Kansas also doesn't have that many Democrats, period, which means the ones who vote may nevertheless be fairly liberal. According to the 2008 exit poll from the general election in Kansas, there was no exit poll conducted of Kansas's caucus that year, so this is the best we can do. 39% of Democrats who voted in the general election were liberal. Although, again, and I assume that he would understand this, labels like liberal and conservative mean whatever they mean to the people who say it. So a liberal in Kansas doesn't necessarily define it the same as a liberal in Connecticut or something like that. That's fairly similar to the percentage of Democrats nationwide who identified as liberal that year, 42%. It's lower, but furthermore, Kansas holds a caucus which tends to attract a higher share of liberal voters than primaries or general elections do. That might be true, but you're still talking about it attracting the people who live in that state. And you're the person who keeps saying it's a conservative state.
Yeah, and so the idea that less liberals in a state equals more them being more liberal is totally imaginary, not backed by any facts.
Any facts.
And so, Nate, like I said, we generally respect you. I'd like you to come up with facts to back that up. And I'd like to further ask the question, why, when Hillary Clinton won Alabama overwhelmingly, just a couple of days ago on Super Tuesday, you didn't talk about how there's not very many liberals in Alabama, and hence they're more liberal in Alabama, and so obviously Hillary Clinton was going to. I mean, but wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. If they were so liberal in Alabama because there's less liberals, why didn't Bernie Sanders win? Well, that's African American. No, so which one is it, right? So when it's convenient, well, of course, Hillary Clinton has strength of African Americans. That's why she wins the South. That is so important, etc. And then Mike Tabasky then turns around. There's a separate point among all the excuses why only the states she wins matters. Yeah, but she wins relevant states like Virginia because it's a swing state. Okay, wait a minute. Right? He won Colorado, swing state. New Hampshire, swing state. Minnesota, swing state. Right? So why don't those count? Now they're weird. They're weird caucuses, and they're overly white. But they're overly white. What does that mean? I mean, Hillary Clinton used that same argument, except the opposite of it, back in when she was running against Obama. I do better against whites. Being better with whites is more important because there's more whites in the country, which should help me win a general election. Don't vote for Obama because he doesn't do as well with whites. Now she's flipped it on its head and says, vote for me because Bernie Sanders does too well with whites. And the media goes along like, oh yeah, obviously. Sure, Bernie Sanders does better with whites. That's why it doesn't count.
It's like a Goldilocks thing. You want to do well, but not too well.
Right. Jesus Christ.
I don't know. How about this? Just do well with as many groups as possible. And we're going to keep doing these elections until we know who does the best with all the different groups.
I don't know if you've ever been
we should do.
I don't know if you've ever been to Kansas, but I have been to Kansas. Plenty. And every time I'm there, I'm like, man, I can't find a Democrat, but whatever I do, super fucking liberal.
And turnout was up, apparently.
Right.
What's that? Turnout was up, which also, by the way, goes against what he was saying, because if turnout is down, then you would imagine that only the most liberal people would go. But if you've expanded turnout from when Obama and Hillary went at it, then it would imply that you're probably sucking in some people who are not the crazy granola-eating Kansas hippie stereotype.
When Nate Silver says Kansas is too liberal, you have to believe.
All right, and final irony here is that they'll say, now wait a minute, Kansas again doesn't count because there's too much voter turnout, and in a caucus with a lot of voter turnout, Bernie has more enthusiasm behind him, and so if more voters turn out and he brings out more voters, well, he was more likely to win, so it doesn't count. Wait a minute. Isn't that what you want in a candidate? Don't you want someone who's going to bring out more voters and get people excited and increase voter turnout in a general election? Yeah, but Hillary Clinton's more like that. Wait a minute, that's the exact opposite. They make no sense. That's weird. Look at what we're doing with you guys. We're giving you numbers, we're giving you reality, and we're having that conversation, right? And earlier, we discussed the polling, and we gave you the reality that Hillary Clinton is doing better in some of the upcoming states, and that's also real, and that's also relevant, right? But
yeah,
we are trying our darndest to give you the facts, right? Now, we're also telling you what our perspective is. They're not giving you their perspective, and also burying the facts that are inconvenient for their secret perspective, right? And it's not. I don't know who Nate Silver is going to vote for, and he's much, much better than the rest of the mainstream media. Like the mainstream media, we know which direction they're going. Bernie Sanders makes the comfortable a little uncomfortable. Yeah. And they are among the comfortable. And they don't like him. With Nate, I get the sense that it's like, well, Hillary's got to win, right? So I'll do mainly numbers, but every once in a while I'll throw in theory in there that I didn't really research because all the states that Bernie wins shouldn't really count, and the ones Hillary wins are awesome and are enormously important.
By the way, people have been sending me in these graphics showing that one of the graphics says for the last 50 years, another says for the last 100 years. I don't know for sure which is true, that the winner of the Democratic primary in Kansas goes on to win the presidency every time. Which I grant. Look, I'm not going to look into all the facts, but I will grant you that. But that might end up being true. But that's the sort of political statistic or predictive thing that is true until it's not true anymore. Like there was a very long period where the taller, either the Republican was taller or the Democrat was taller. The one who was taller won, which was true up until George W. Bush beat John Kerry. So those are the sorts of things that aren't necessarily that predictive. They could just be historical.
Yeah, that's nonsense. Don't. Yeah, I know. And then this gopher somewhere predicted each election. I dismissed that.
Well, he came out and he was scared of the rising fascism in America, so he went back in his little hole.
Okay, all right. So, guys, we're going to take a quick couple of minute break here. We're going to come back in a second. I want to read some tweets before we go to the break, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do after the break. But you guys have been tweeting in, and I love it, and I want to share it with everybody. Tyranny, writes in, mahalo, the Young Turks selection coverage, so I don't have to watch CNN crap because it's too damn early to start drinking in Hawaii. That's awesome. Tyranny. I made it sound like it's tyranny, like it's a Trump
or Tyrion.
Seth Iser writes in, watching TYT live in West Virginia with a bunch of Trump signs in my neighborhood. Oh God, thanks for the actual logic, guys. Happy to be with you, Seth. Okay, and then we've got more. Rachel writes in from Canada. I'm Canadian. I promise we don't want Cruz either. I hear you on that. And then Jay Tank writes in, I started watching you literally for the first time just this week. Why, welcome, Jay. And now I can never go back to MSM, mainstream media. Thank you, Jay. Stay right with us here on tytnetwork.com/live. And Mike Shanahan finally writes in, just realized I can stream the Young Turks to my TV. The only thing that can make this day better is big wins by Bernie Sanders in Nebraska and Kansas. Do we have an announcement, John?
They already called Maine, right? These are just the specific numbers?
Yeah, Maine is called.
Maine is called. Okay, so Ted Cruz did win by, I can't do that math quick enough. Okay. Several thousand votes.
You know what? I'll read one last tweet for you guys. Renee Van Steverin writes in, where can we grab the it's actually Play YouTube TYT sticker on your laptop? She's referring to John's laptop. Let's take a one shot of that. What were they asking about? No, not the think tank sticker.
The Bernie?
No, the other one.
The iHeartTV. No.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's on shoptyt.com, but you should check it out just in case. And by the way, on Friday I told you guys the Bernie So Punk posters were sold out. Mm-hmm. You guys have been asking about that. Well, they're back. We've got a new order, so if you want a t-shirt or a poster, that's also at shoptyt.com. Now, when we come back, I'm going to tell you some hilarious criticisms we've been getting. I know you're going to enjoy that. We're going to have more results for you. And then I'm actually going to tell you where I disagree with Bernie Sanders, where he's more liberal than I am. Okay? So that'll be an interesting conversation. Okay? So all that's coming up in just like 2 minutes. So stay right here. Welcome to your Friday postgame. Except it's currently midday on Thursday.
Are you gonna fire me?
Sometimes I'm being a dick. Back in 2005, we almost went under, but members rescued us.
Once their only method of success is going the athletic route, it tends to be the more preferred way to treat your body.
Nothing good in the world is ever happening. Strong army that all they want to do is fight. It's totally bullshit.
Don't do drugs and don't shoot people.
TYT is all in a good mood today. I know I'm a weirdo if I read books, but fuck people. I have a stack of papers here. Believe it or not, this is how Cenk used to be when he did the radio show. Wait till you see these huge things.
I'm gonna go with your tricep. Size very impressive. The quads.
That's for the members. That's for the post games together. We're too strong. Come on, this is a family show. Billy.
If you're letting your kids watch this show, I really question your judgment.
Yeah, you've got problems. For the entirety of the Young Turks. Sorry, Mom and Dad.
But guys play with their balls all the time.
And she says, and she points to me. Like, guys play with their balls all the time.
Look at his fucking face. The kid is a little kid.
She draws her line at the cock. Okay.
Oh, yeah, extra love him. It's like touching.
Oh, it's great.
I like it. Leave me alone while I smoke my splooge. That's what it's called, right? Splooge? No, it's not. What do they call it, Joy? This cannot end up on YouTube. It's bad.
Yeah.
No. It's a nickname for...
Yes. I believe it's split. Okay. Splooge is a nickname for something else.
I know.
And I don't know. Maybe she's smoking that too. I'm not saying anything. I nailed it. Bye. So this is basically what she did to her cat. Go ahead, Jesus.
Fix your face. Fix your face.
Okay, now that's what she did to her face. Okay, now show me what she did to her account. The nuclear explosion. All right, so then she said about her account this. The emperor thing.
Tide goes in, tide goes in, tide
No,
goes out.
the tide does not go in or out. No. You know what we have to do? We have to delete our entire YouTube account because of the way we've handled this story. Press the button. Jesus, press the button. No, I meant the nuclear explosion.
John and Hannah here.
And here's a brief look at what Think Tank's all about.
I'm smiling. Oh my god, I'm so proud.
Can a robot dance like this?
Wow.
This isn't going like I've been coming.
Sorry guys, don't hate me for the last Think Tank video. I'm just gonna go now.
Yeah, no, I need help.
The one thing that really appeals to people in the online audience is authenticity and sincerity.
Okay, we agree to disagree.
So of course you get the negative feedback that isn't constructive at all, and I dislike those people.
Hannah looks inbred. That's really difficult for my self-esteem.
You need to lift weights. Fuck you.
Hey, let's keep it real. Am I wrong?
Once I was bit by a monkey. I can't say
No big band.
well, them.
Whoa! I used to be very socially awkward, but look at me now. What up, girl? Okay. That couldn't look more like a vagina. Oh my god, I've never seen a clitoris before. You want to
Better
stab?
than that. I want to stab people. So what really turns women on?
Anyone want to pick a weird way to fuck? This dress is blue and black.
Well, I disrespectfully disagree.
She is one of the 100 finalists for the Mars One project. I don't know what that means.
Why do you cringe every time you look at a photo of yourself?
Because I'm often masturbating in photos of myself. 2 photos of myself.
Love.
Who's about to help you find it?
Also, masturbation totally counts as sex for you, so do it.
Why you make me this weird alien?
Whoever has haughty eyes and a proud heart, I will not tolerate.
You guys tell me, hottie or not?
Tune in tomorrow for all new videos with me and with Hannah and with Think Tank. Have a good night.
Hey, Al, I can't remember. Is there a specific blur we use for Miley Cyrus's butthole? Is it like a Gaussian or a mosaic or a compound?
beats his wife. I have 5 minutes. Explain the Facebook. Go.
All right, we are back on the Young Turks weekend at Bernie's, and we are about to have more poll closings in exactly 1 minute. So I have that 1 minute to tell you super random stories. Number one, the guy you just saw during the break there, Aaron Wysocki, Commanders of the Armies of the East, the guy with the Pittsburgh shirt and that promo. He just emailed me with a great little story. He was at a car dealership in Pittsburgh. Guy asked, "Hey, what do you do?" He says, "I work for the Young Turks." He's like, "Oh, that's awesome. I watch the Young Turks." And he's like, "How do you know the Young Turks?" He said, "Who doesn't?" He said earnestly. He even knew where our studio was.
That Daily Beast editor doesn't know.
Like, not the exact address. Yeah, I know, right? So that's awesome. Barbara McCullen says, please print some more Punk Bernie posters. Barbara asks, and ye shall receive. We have. That's on shoptyt.com, as I told you earlier. I want to thank all of you guys for making this coverage possible. We couldn't do it on a weekend like this if it wasn't for you guys. tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. 10 seconds until more polls close. We might have immediate calls in Louisiana, so we'll tell you all about that. Oh, so hilarious. I saw that too. There's now 50% off sale, not for us, on Jeb Bush items.
Commemorative merchandise.
And his face looks like, oh no, give me a break.
Here's the thing.
Give me a break.
No, that seems like a bad idea. Like, who the hell would want a failed candidate? But I might buy some stuff as joke gifts. It's all joke gifts.
Oh, it is a joke gift.
I
I'm
want
gonna
to
get
buy
some stuff.
t-shirts.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go now.
Oh, I
wonder if he's got a shirt that says, give me a break.
Give me a break.
If he did, if he agreed to which I would buy it, I might buy it and resell it on shoptyt.com.
You know what? We should make that shirt anyway.
Yeah, why don't we just make it?
You know, the guy who would buy it is JR. When we play basketball, JR has jerseys of like relatively little known players on teams they were on for 3 seconds. Like, it's so specific.
Really?
Yeah. I can't think of a good example now, but you'll be like, oh, I know that player. He was on that team. Oh yeah, he was on that team for like half a season, right? So, boy, JR's going to Jeb Bush's shop right now, going nuts on Bush jerseys. Next time we play basketball, JR's jersey's going to say Jeb! !
There is, much like his campaign, there is nothing interesting in this store. It just says Jeb.
Everything on there.
Everything is just Jeb.
Right. Now, Donald Trump's going to speak in a little bit. We already heard from Bernie Sanders. We had Ted Cruz speak randomly in the middle of the day when no one heard it. Rubio, I would be surprised if he was going to speak because he got embarrassed today everywhere. His campaign is a mess. Okay, it is not just Donald Trump saying that. And Trump's going to turn all of his guns on Cruz now because it looks like Rubio is a has-been, you know, and now that Cruz has given him a real challenge, boy, Trump's going to talk about his dick to no end. Right? So we'll see how that goes. Trump was winning big in Kentucky, so at least he's going to hold Kentucky, even though in the upset he lost Maine and he lost Kansas in a much bigger way than expected. Earlier in this coverage, we talked about whether there's a turn coming. And it looks like in the Republican race, there might be a turn coming where Ted Cruz picks up more momentum and Donald Trump finally gets exposed to some degree. That irony was not necessarily intended, but he has been talking about how he's basically been exposing himself the last couple of days. Again, as John pointed out earlier, he talked about his dick at a campaign stop and rally earlier today.
Yeah.
Everybody always tells me my hands are so big. Oh, trust me. Believe me.
They
believe me, my hands are big.
They come up to me and say, "Your hands are so big and so strong." No, they didn't. They didn't do that. I actually feel 1% bad for Trump now. Because that's the saddest thing I've ever heard in my goddamn life.
Many people say I have big hands. Some of the top hand watchers in the country have mentioned my hands. People love my hands. And my hands do very well with the Mexicans.
But his hands will not be building that wall.
No.
He's going to make the Mexicans do it.
But their hands will be building the wall.
Nearly every Mexican official has come out in the last couple of weeks going, "We will not build that fucking wall."
By the way, Stephen Buckley has a great point. We need to come out with a please clap shirt.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of shirts we got to do. Speaking about shirts, can we do a shirt that says "I'm from a weird state"?
That would be good, yeah. Keep Bernie states weird. That's an Austin thing. So just in case you guys are confused, why is he wearing a pink shirt? That doesn't make any sense.
That's the other thing I was going to mention. Thank you for reminding me.
What? Can you explain it? Because it's weird.
Yes. Okay, it is weird.
It's like a Kansas caucus. It's so weird.
Okay, if you guys didn't hear our coverage from earlier in the week, you might be wondering, what the hell are they talking about with this weird thing, right? So, Daily Beast had a hilarious article, because Daily Beast, unintentionally funny, of course, I did this piece, Final Judgment on Friday, where I read all of the anti-Bernie Sanders headlines they had. I mean, it took literally 9 minutes to read them all. Okay, it was amazing. And in their unintentionally hilarious piece, they said that Bernie Sanders wins don't count. And one of the reasons was because he wins in weird states. It's funny every time. Okay? Weird caucuses, they're so strange. Now, but they don't mean all caucuses are weird, because the caucus that Hillary Clinton won in Nevada, perfectly normal.
Not weird at all.
Nothing weird about that caucus. Yeah. Okay.
Although there were some legitimately weird things about that caucus.
I know. The ironic thing is there were weird things about that caucus. It's weird. Okay. Now, John's shirt. John's not only one of the co-hosts of the Young Turks, he's the host and executive producer of a little channel called Think Tank. I say little when I mean large. They just passed today.
Wait. As much as I love you building me up, the AP has just said, breaking, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders wins Democratic caucuses in Nebraska.
Yes! Okay. So,
now go back to building me up.
No, hold on. Let's talk about Nebraska. We'll get back to Think Tank in a second, okay? The Think Tank, okay. We told you coming into this coverage that we think that Bernie Sanders has a good chance of winning 3 out of the 4 states in this weekend. Now, the Maine Republicans voted today, but Maine Democrats vote tomorrow. We'll have that for you at 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, okay? So, Maine we don't know about tonight. All we know is Kansas, Nebraska, and Louisiana on the Democratic side. And Hillary Clinton, big lead in Louisiana, very likely to win it. So I assume she's going to win it. I assume we'll tell you that in just a little bit. So the question was, can he win Kansas and Nebraska? One of the reasons that we told you we're not really sure that he's going to win in Kansas and Nebraska is because in Kansas, for example, as John told you earlier, Hillary Clinton had a 10-point lead in the last poll done. Now, this is from 2 weeks ago, but she did have a lead. Well, as it turns out, he held those states. He did win Kansas and Nebraska. He absolutely needed them. If he didn't have them, then certainly that more people would be talking about, he's going to get on, come on, Hillary Clinton's inevitable. So he's doing exactly what he needed to do. I know, and we've talked about it, and they will dismiss it. They will say he was supposed to win those things. It doesn't count. But I don't know, when is it ever going to count? I don't. If he wins Michigan, will that count? If he wins Ohio or Florida, will that count? I don't know. Okay, now, right now, he's trailing in those states. But he was trailing in Kansas and he won. So he holds court here. He holds court. And I want you guys to check it out too, because it's going to be interesting. We'll see if we're right or we're wrong. If over the weekend or on Monday you see all the mainstream media making a big deal like, hey, wow, Ted Cruz with surprising wins, which they'll definitely do that, right? And wow, Bernie Sanders with big wins what some are billing as Super Tuesday. Then you'll go, oh, you know what? Maybe the Young Turks don't know what they're talking about. Maybe their coverage isn't right. Mainstream media is totally fair. They said big wins for Bernie Sanders and he's got momentum. Super glad to see that. My guess, all of our guess is you won't see that. They'll talk about Ted Cruz's surprising wins and they'll say, Bernie Sanders won the states. We always knew he was going to win. We always knew it. It doesn't count. You always knew that. First of all, you always knew that Hillary Clinton was going to win the South. How come that counted? But secondly, Hillary Clinton was supposed to win all the states. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like earlier in the process, you told us Bernie Sanders had no chance of winning any of the states. So how come her states count? Shouldn't you, by this same logic, say, well, every state she wins by definition, she was supposed to win, and hence doesn't get it.
So he won Kansas, he won Nebraska. Can he win one state that isn't effectively a large surf town? Like, does it have to all be young libs that are voting for him?
Yeah. So
And Hillary Clinton also lost Nebraska to Barack Obama, which they took because there was an oversight. They didn't really spend any time campaigning there. They campaigned in Nebraska this time. Bill Clinton went to Nebraska this time. So they tried to win Nebraska, and this is what happened.
Yeah. So that's such a great. Now, apparently, he did outspend her, but he can't afford to since he's raising money from rich people.
Nebraska is very, very, very liberal.
and very weird.
Yeah, there's probably not that many libs there, so they probably feel the need to be act for them.
I mean, Ben Nelson.
So, we want to focus on that for one more second. This is such a good point. I read several articles way earlier on saying the Hillary Clinton campaign knows that they screwed up against Barack Obama, didn't pay enough attention to the caucuses, and they got killed in those caucuses and wanted to make a big difference. They were not going to make that same mistake. They're going to concentrate on the caucuses. Now, they've lost almost all the caucuses except Nevada, right? And now Iowa, they won by 0.2. No, so we call that a tie, but you want to say that's a big victory for her? Okay, have at it, right? But obviously they did not do as well in caucuses as they had planned to. How come that's not a big story? Like, we know, I can show you the articles. She's concentrating on the caucuses, not going to make that same mistake. She's going to win the caucuses. Oops, she lost them. How come that immediately, in 1 second flat, turned into, well, of course he was always going to win them. Of course, you never had a chance in those. Those don't count. Yeah. Now, I know I'm obsessing. I know, and you can tell I'm obsessing about the doesn't count thing. But it makes a big difference. Now, I know we are a voice that is strongly saying, no, wait, let's see what happens here. Let's look at the actual numbers. Let's look at the data. And let's share with you the good news, the bad news, etc. And our perspective is on a policy level, we agree more with Bernie Sanders. We're very honest about that, right? But it's us against the world. So when all of the rest of the media gives you a wall of, no, this race is not interesting. Don't go out to vote. It's not a big deal. Bernie Sanders doesn't have a chance. Well, it's tough to fight every other media outlet there. That's why we're obsessing about it. And it's fundamentally unfair to one candidate that every election that Hillary Clinton wins is celebrated as a gigantic, unbelievable election. And everyone Bernie Sanders wins is, man, it's not important. The 4 states he won on Super Tuesday, he lost overall. Don't be crazy. Let me tell you an inside baseball story, which is interesting. And to be fair to the media, they did make a big deal out of that Iowa was closer than they expected. So that was not bad, and New Hampshire blowout win for Bernie. They did cover that, right? From there on out, it was nothing but Hillary, and it's all over, right? So I wrote about how Bernie Sanders actually won Super Tuesday. Of course, not on the delegate count, right? That's obvious, but because of the momentum that it could create. Because we knew Hillary Clinton was going to win the southern states, but we also knew that Bernie Sanders was going to win Vermont. If you use that same logic, okay, we got it. Those went to the people that we expected. The question was, can Hillary Clinton put him away by winning in states that we didn't know about, Colorado, Minnesota, and it turns out Oklahoma. And she didn't. He won in those states. Now, it was also a big deal that Hillary Clinton won Massachusetts. So if he had won that as well, it would have given him more momentum. So those are things that are interesting and shows you that Bernie Sanders had a better night than some people suspected, because Colorado and Minnesota were totally up in the air, okay? So I write that article. We send it around. The reaction we got from the rest of the press was, well, we can't really cover that because that is not a legitimate opinion. Like, that opinion is so outrageous and outlandish that if you were to say something in between that and what we all believe to be true, which is Hillary Clinton is awesome and has won everything, and Bernie's wins don't mean anything. If you come to the middle ground and say they're largely useless, but maybe it means something else, then maybe we could run with that. Isn't that interesting?
Well, okay, so you say that's too crazy to even print as a guest piece. If you were to say, for instance, that the KKK was progressives, you'd be covering Super Saturday. So weird how that works out.
If you haven't seen that story, a Trump supporter said on CNN that the KKK is liberal. And it went on.
And that it was liberals who divide people on race.
Yeah.
Right. Not Donald Trump and not the KKK, but liberals and progressives.
Okay, they called it. She was up by 52 points. They should call Louisiana. I was going to make a bold
back on the air on CNN.
Continue to put pressure on the Republicans in
So
the
Hillary
Senate.
Clinton has won Louisiana.
Constitutional duty. But here's what I want you to know. Even if the president gets
She won by 50
nominated,
points, it looks like.
and even
I would be comfortable with that.
That's definitely comfortable.
that nominee,
Now that's the state that elected.
there may well be 1 or 2 more openings in the next 4 years. We need a Supreme Court that expands voting rights, not cuts back on them. One that protects workers' rights, not breaks unions. One that reverses Citizens United, not hangs a for sale sign on the door of American democracy. But even that is not enough. We have allowed our politics to be hijacked by extreme ideologues in state governments all over our country. They draw congressional district lines that promote paralysis in Washington because Republican incumbents fear a primary challenge from the right more than from the sensible center. So we need to bring more people into our party, keep the enthusiasm of young voters, develop a pipeline for new leaders, and convince all of those who turn out and vote with us in presidential years that they also have to vote every 2 years in every congressional and state election to prevent the kind of gridlock that has long kept too many of President Obama's good ideas from getting a fair hearing. But first, my friends, we have to win this election. And we all know the stakes keep getting higher. And the rhetoric we're hearing from the other side keeps sinking lower. I gotta tell you, that debate the other night.
Yeah, she's already in the general.
I heard Jim Blanchard mention, I know others have as well. You know how when you're in elementary school and you get graded on how you get along with people? And there's that one line, plays well with others. I mean, really, you just want to pull your hair out when you see that insult fest that goes on among the Republicans. But I want us also to remember, we've seen the consequences of Republican control in Lansing, too. And we can't afford to let them take the White House and keep the Congress. They will rip away all the progress we've made under President Obama. We've had more than 70 straight months of private sector job growth, including more than 240,000 jobs added just last month.
There's no evidence of that.
And in Michigan,
she's been saying that for a while.
you're leading the way. The auto industry at its best year ever.
She looks like Pat.
Innovation is on the rise. We see it in the car makers and
Physically,
suppliers.
the background with the flag up.
Yes. The defense corridor, the high-tech firms in Ann Arbor, the cutting-edge design in Grand Rapids, and the next generation of engineers being trained in Houghton. Look at what's happening right here in Detroit. New businesses are opening. Families are moving in. The street lights are on again. The buses are running. That's why I chose to come to Detroit yesterday to give a speech about what I want to do to keep the economy moving forward. Because, of course, we can't be satisfied until economic revitalization that we're seeing in some neighborhoods reaches all of Detroit's neighborhoods. But you're already proving, and I don't know why we have to keep learning this lesson, because the Republicans like to divide us, but you are proving when we work together, we can rise together. And that's what this campaign is all about.
Latitude.
Instead of
By the
building
way,
walls, we're
CNN
going
just
to
a
be
minute ago,
knocking
instead of
down
showing Hillary Clinton's
and
speech,
building
was
that
showing an empty
opportunity
Trump
and
podium.
empowerment.
They think
So
an even
every
empty
American
podium of Trump is more interesting than a Democratic speech.
Then,
That's
and
CNN's
only
perspective.
then, can America live up to its full potential.
Oh, America's full potential. That's not a platitude, is it?
No, that's concrete.
Today, Democrats caucused and voted in Louisiana, Kansas, and Nebraska. I want to congratulate Senator Sanders for running a strong campaign. I am thrilled we're adding to our pledged delegate count. I'm grateful to everyone who turned out to support us.
And he's going to win.
Now all eyes turn to Michigan. And I can tell you this. We're going to work for every vote.
Hillary won.
And I hope you'll join us by going to HillaryClinton.com, making a donation.
Hey, you don't mean environmental.
Text JOIN, JOIN, to 47246. I hope you will volunteer in these next few days to spread the word.
I know we're not allowed to make comments about our clothing.
To all of us, not just those at the top.
I'm allowed to make jokes about Ben Carson's
special
suit
interests.
Anyway, that looks like it's made out of hemp.
One way, worship one way, or even think one way. America prospers when we all
I like her
prosper.
boldness in her outfit.
America is strong.
Again, I'm not allowed to talk about it. But she's got her own
got work
style.
to do.
Yeah, it would be interesting if
some
of the male candidates started to diverge a little bit. Like Carson, honestly, was the only person who didn't wear the stereotypical colors. And he went outside. Like he wore a pinstripe suit for one of the debates.
Whole.
Let's start to mix it up a little bit.
Diversity is a strength, not a weakness.
And he got much better suits.
Sold enough books.
If we see each other's humanity, if we lift each other up when we stumble, we can keep moving toward that more perfect union. Instead of trying to divide America between us and them, let's try to find a little more love and kindness in our hearts, to respect one another, to support one another.
You
We
should
should
respect
work
and support
together.
people by supporting policies that help working people, not the TPP.
And an inclusive society. I
is all
believe with all
bullshit.
my
This is
heart
all empty
bring down
rhetoric.
barriers for hardworking families.
This is
All across America, in old industrial cities and small Appalachian towns and farm country and Indian country, in every community that's
she's working to raise the speaking
by
fees of
lost
all
jobs and
Americans.
lost hope.
I'm trying to think of what.
It starts
It's a good joke,
with
Johnny,
making
don't.
very clear, and I put this at the center of my
Working
economic
to raise the
policy.
speaking fees of all Americans. I'll repeat it, John. I like it.
Need a raise
You can tweet
and
it.
more
Just tag
good
me.
jobs,
So that's pretty.
jobs
I'll make a
that
graphic.
pay well, and provide dignity, pride, and a sense of purpose. And don't let anyone tell you we can't make things in America anymore. Because as you're proving every day here in Michigan, we can, we are, and we will. But it's not going to come from refighting battles from 20 years ago. We need a real strategy to invest in manufacturing, small business, and clean energy. Enough clean energy to power every home in America. So when you vote in the primary on Tuesday, remember, there's only one candidate in this race who actually has a plan to do that. And we're going to stand up to all those who put special interests ahead of America's interests. You know, the other day I was in Boston at the site of the original Tea Party, and I had to wonder, what would those early American patriots make of corporations that seem to have absolutely no loyalty to the country that has given them so much? Look at Nabisco, laying off 600 workers in Chicago, moving a production line out of the country. Even though Nabisco has long received tax breaks from the state of Illinois, they have no problem taking taxpayer dollars with one hand and giving out pink slips with the other. Look at the growing number of corporations moving their headquarters overseas just so they can avoid paying their fair share of taxes here at home. Like Johnson Controls, which makes car parts in Wisconsin. It actually lobbied for and benefited from the auto rescue in 2008 and 9. Taxpayers helped save the company, Now it's turning its back on our country. Now look, I'm not interested in condemning whole categories of businesses or the entire private sector, of course not. But I do want to send a clear message. If you cheat your employees, exploit your customers, pollute our environment, or rip off the taxpayers, we will hold you accountable.
Not naming a business.
We will make
specific instance where that's happened.
We will make corporations
murder
pay
some of your employees and let them bleed out.
inversions.
I think we're going to do something. We're going to, no, we are.
Ship
We are.
jobs
Right?
overseas.
Right? Yeah, we are.
Will make them give back the tax breaks they've received here in America.
Oh, no, that's a specific proposal.
Then we can take that money and put it to work, investing in the communities being left behind.
Maybe I'm being unfair now, but I'm very skeptical she'll actually
are bringing
do it. But if
jobs
she does,
back
that specific proposal
So
would be great.
when businesses do the right thing, we'll stand with them. Companies like Michigan Ladder Company and Ypsilanti, which recently stopped buying fiberglass from China and started making it here at home. We will reward ensuring innovation and investment.
She only won one.
Sharing profits
Hillary Clinton supporter writes back.
with shareholders.
Clinton will still expand her delegate lead tonight.
With new tax.
Yeah, if you include super delegates, that's so stupid. But that is so unbelievably misleading.
When companies treat workers like assets to be invested in, not costs to be cut. I also think it's simple economics. America grows when your paycheck grows. The idea of corporate patriotism might sound quaint
in
an era
they were
of
running
vast
even nationally, she should win by 300
multinationals.
percentage points. And if she
the
doesn't,
right thing to do
that's fine for her.
and the smart thing to do. All of us have to do our part to break down the economic barriers holding back our families. And then there are other barriers too. Barriers that stop children from getting the quality public education they need and deserve. Barriers that stop young people from getting out of debt and into good paying jobs. Barriers that stop women from earning equal pay for our work. And all the barriers that still stand in the way of people of color sharing fully in the promise of America. Now all of us know what happened in Flint, how a city's children were poisoned by toxic water because their state government wanted to save money. And I'm glad this crisis is finally getting the national attention it deserves. And tomorrow, Mayor Weaver will announce new ways for people to help. But let's not forget, there are lots of Flints out there. Places where poor people and people of color have been left out and left behind. And we don't have to look very far, do we? Right here in Detroit, children are sitting in classrooms infested with rodents and mold. Ceilings are caving in. The heat is barely functioning. Just 6%. I want you to hear this. Just 6% of fourth graders are proficient in reading. We are consigning those precious children.
That we are what in reading?
Behind.
Only 6% of fourth graders are
proficient in reading.
Yeah, that's
That is
unbelievable.
unacceptable.
I think we should privatize
In America.
Get her up to a corporation.
It is
Take
time
some money
for
out of
Governor
the cities.
Snyder to give Detroit schools back to the people of Detroit.
Does anybody think she's supposed to? She's a Rahm Emanuel, close down public schools.
And it is time for every child in America to have a great school and a great teacher, no matter what zip code they live in.
Remember when she was out there supporting the Wisconsin teachers? Remember when
The pattern here is unmistakable and undeniable. What happened in Flint would never happen in Grosse Pointe. The schools in Bloomfield Hills are never going to look like the schools in Detroit. The stories of neglect in Flint and Detroit are a national disgrace. But there are other stories as well. There are stories of resilience and renewal. In Detroit, you see it with the new businesses and the efforts of black churches like Mack Avenue Community Church on the east side, cleaning up and developing communities, in the innovative announcement that your mayor made a few days ago to help people move back into affordable homes. Now that renaissance hasn't come to Flint yet, but boy, I'll tell you, Mayor Weaver is going to do everything she can to make sure it does. I am so happy that we're seeing in Flint a community that, yes, it's been knocked down, but it's been absolutely clear to anybody looking. It refuses to be knocked out. They started digging up the first of those rusty pipes yesterday, and we have to support them until all the city's
fair, you know, we talked about how CNN did not show the Bernie Sanders speech. They're not showing the Hillary Clinton speech either.
Remind me of the scripture of St. Paul to the Galatians. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. And that should inspire all of us. Never to lose heart, never to give up. I believe deeply that if we resist the forces trying to drive us apart, we can come together to make this country work for everyone.
It's worked for 50 years.
The striving, and the successful.
Wouldn't it be great for CNN if everybody went back to vanilla?
Wouldn't it? We need only look at Detroit.
Ben and Jerry's.
I wanted the national press that follows me around.
Guess who Ben and Jerry's is
to hear the stories about Detroit come back. Now, some of you
I know, but
heard about
that doesn't really count.
Because they're weird.
He's a machine.
And you know why the TYT doesn't count?
They're
weird. Well, that is true.
Why would anyone know about them?
Every day for the past 10 years, he walked 21 miles to get to work and back.
Yeah.
There weren't enough buses because of cutbacks in public transit.
I don't know.
But
so
his
are
job
we
meant
biased that I
everything
find
to
this
him.
boring?
No.
So every day,
because this is standard stuff that we've always heard. Platitudes, bullshit, her personal story about some person she met that she doesn't know, and it's all about going towards Michigan because she wants to win. This is all politics, and that's why you're bored of it, and it's not real, and it's not going to change anything. This is in defense of the status quo with giving a lip service to change, and we all know this, and that's why this is empty.
I will say I was bored by her speech.
To tear down all the barriers that stand in the way of every American.
Yeah,
he was joking around.
There is
The
no
majority of what he was saying, I have heard literally those exact words out of him.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and it's very fair to point out. He has added some attack lines against Hillary Clinton, like that speech on Goldman Sachs must have been Shakespearean in its quality.
That is good.
If I am your Democratic nominee, I will make Detroit a central issue in this campaign.
He's going to downplay Chris's success,
I will make Flint a separate issue in this campaign.
Or maybe not. I mean, you can do that in Iowa.
Comeback, a story of resilience and success.
You even think that maybe he's not entertaining?
I admit when he is entertaining. I thought the Dick thing was really entertaining. I think that there were about a 10-debate-long span there where he was just saying the same thing about the wall and the American
I am a
like,
progressive.
oh my God, that's amazing.
Who likes to get things done.
What? I am a progressive who likes to get things done.
Spread the word. Get everybody you know to come out and vote on Tuesday. Let's move forward together. Thank you, Michigan.
She got the Iraq War done.
Yeah.
Okay, so that speech is concluded, but CNN has been showing it on Hillary Clinton's side policy-wise in the primaries. But that's totally, I don't know if it's unfair or just ridiculous to not go to Hillary Clinton's speech instead of an empty podium of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Okay, but again, to the right-wing media bias between two Democratic opponents, they'll go to the one who's more right-wing, Hillary Clinton. Between a Democratic and a Republican opponent, they'll go to the one who's more right-wing, the Republican. Even if his podium is empty. To be fair, we get it. Like, we're just having a slight debate there that Donald Trump is entertaining. So it's not like when he comes out, we're going to cover it, because he's going to make dick jokes, and he's going to try to rip Ted Cruz's face off. He's going to make a joke about.
Will he talk about his hands?
He'll talk about how Marco Rubio is a small guy.
Yeah, he'll have to.
Yes. So all of that will come up, right? You know why he's still making fun of Marco Rubio, even though Marco Rubio had a miserable performance today? And we'll see, because he hasn't given his speech yet. Because Marco Rubio made the joke about his dick. Yeah, so that got under his skin, and now he hates Marco Rubio even more than the guy who's an actual challenge to him. Yeah. Okay? So we'll see how much he attacks Rubio tonight. By the way, you know where Marco Rubio is tonight? In Puerto Rico. Because they're having a primary as well. Like, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow. And it's just one other indication of how he's not doing very well.
Well, if he thinks that this weekend is the place where he has the best chance and maybe a personal presence would work, no, he's not doing well.
No, let's just keep it real. Let's call it what it is, right? And he thinks some of the Puerto Rican vote in Florida might help him, but he's down miserably there. And so thank you for staying with us as CNN continues to show an empty podium. We appreciate you doing that, because I know that Trump's empty podium is super exciting, right?
Well, anyway. You never know if there might, you never know if like a racist might just parachute in or something. You don't know if something might happen. There might be a KKK guy show up, or a Confederate soldier might show up and shoot someone. So you never know. Things could happen. That's why I say CNN, keep the camera on.
Yeah. I still don't understand why they haven't called Kentucky or Louisiana for the Republicans when Trump has a 9-point lead in Kentucky with 36% reporting. That's sizable. But in Louisiana, he's got like approximately a 189-point lead. So it's weird that they haven't called it yet. It's not conspiratorial weird. Not like a Bernie Sanders state weird. Just weird. Right? Okay, so let me say. A couple things. First, we will show you Trump's speech. We'll make fun of it. Keep it real. There's still 2 races to be called. What I want you guys to do is tweet to your friends, put it on your Facebook posts, whenever we do election coverage, whenever we're live, okay? Now,
No. Even, where's this my camera? Even if you don't want to do it, fucking do it. And we're going to do a lot more than just waterboard.
Okay. All right, so that's tytnetwork.com/live. Let your friends, family, everybody know. And by the way, some of you have already done that, even though I didn't ask for it earlier, which I should have, because people, when we were showing the Bernie Sanders speech, we got a lot of tweets saying, hey, my mom, my grandmother, etc., turned you guys on to hear that. I hope you didn't turn off during the last speech. Now, we had a little bit of a discussion between Bernie Sanders, the differences between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton speeches. There's a lot of arguments to be made there. I'm not as clear as Jimmy is on the differences, but there is no question that Hillary's has more platitude. Okay, she does a lot of, oh my God, we're going to build a bridge to the future,
make America whole again,
and all blah, 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 right? And John is right that Bernie has been saying the same lines 80% about the same. They're a little bit more specific.
His speech is better, but I love Mad Max. If I were to watch it 10 times in a row, I'm going to be pretty goddamn bored at the end. Doesn't mean it isn't good.
But I don't know. Today I wasn't. I mean, I've seen it just as many times as you have, and really? Part of it was the staging, which Hillary Clinton didn't
chase scenes are good, and
like
it's a good movie. I don't discount it, but
his crowd was super amped up today, right?
Yeah, true.
And Hillary Clinton's crowd seemed more muted. That might have just been the poor staging. She had the George Patton flag behind her, right? Patton-esque sized flag behind her, and her crowd seemed further away, so the mic probably picked it up less. So that made it a little bit more dull. And even when, so they both did the anecdotes, but even when Bernie does the anecdote, he doesn't do it like a politician, like, I met a woman recently the Martin O'Malley way, which Hillary Clinton just did a second ago. I met a woman in Flint, Michigan who was doing this and this. He just goes, yeah, I saw a guy the other day, and he says this, and I said, yeah, you're right. What the hell? He just seems so much more real, and that's more engaging.
Yeah.
Authenticity.
Yeah. At some point, by the way, you should go back to I was just buying the T-shirt. Okay.
Yes. So So John is not only the co-host of the Young Turks, he's the host of Think Tank, which, by the way, is our second largest channel, no matter what Jimmy Dore says. I know that you claim Jimmy Dore Show has 3 million subscribers, but that's a little fuzzy math. Nate Silver's crunching the numbers on that right now.
Check, that's if all political news shows were tied.
I'd be expected to be up by
I'd be expected to be up by the last million more. Yes.
Right.
And to be fair, I've never sold a single book.
And to be fair, Think Tank is kind of weird. Okay.
Well, to be fair, it's true.
That actually is true. Anyway, seriously, they just passed 1 million subscribers today. So that is, if I had my soundboard, I'd go na 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 ba da da. Okay. So
we got them. Yeah. We got the million.
1 million subscribers ain't nothing to mess with. That's a big number.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, John's done a great job with the channel. Everybody check it out. I was just talking to somebody in our and Hannah Cranston, wonderful job.
Would literally be impossible if it was just me.
Yep.
Probably would have killed myself on the set by now, which would have made for a good
video. That would have been more weird, but maybe got you more subscribers. Yeah. Note to self: consider John killing himself live on air. No, okay. No, it's great job, John. Now, 1 million subscribers is a big deal, and this channel is fantastic. I was just talking to someone in the industry who was talking about Think Tank. Okay, and
really?
Like, oh yeah, wow, and all that stuff, right? And I said, that's bring it down. Okay, but then I asked the Daily Beast, and they're like, no, we don't know it. We don't know it. If the people in the club don't know it, then it must not be real. Anyway, wonderful work, great work.
Thank you. Okay. And I'm very excited.
Now, I want to thank 2 members before we go on, because I want to tell you how Bernie Sanders is more liberal than I am. And I want to talk about Howard Dean's tweet that Jimmy alluded to earlier in the night. Okay, Sandra Gomez is member number 1247, and Joseph Fyatt is number 1248. I don't know if I read those on Friday, but if I didn't, or if I'm rereading them, God bless. There you go. Thank you. We really appreciate it. Members is what makes this show happen, including coverage like this. So tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. Okay, Howard Dean. Howard Dean wrote earlier today, and it was really getting sent around by everybody on Twitter. He wrote, "Superdelegates don't, quote, represent people. I'm not elected by anyone. I'll do what I think is right for the country." Okay, so he's a superdelegate from the state of Vermont, which Bernie Sanders, I believe, won by 68 points?
Yeah.
Something along those lines. So when they say, so are you going to vote for Bernie Sanders? And remember, Howard Dean used to be liberal. Remember back in the day, he was the liberal alternative to John Kerry in 2004.
His famous line was, "I'm from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party,"
which was a great line.
And back then, he wasn't just liberal; he was the crazy.
He was
like, you're going to support Howard Dean? Yes. Okay, make your statement, and then eventually go for one of the reasonable electable candidates.
Right. And these days, he's more of a lobbyist / pundit in Washington.
He's an insurance lobbyist.
Yeah. So the virus is unfortunately. Seems to have infected him. I'm sure he'll be outraged if hears that. Go ahead and get outraged.
By the way, I retweeted that, and just with the only comment I had on was "holy fuck," and I retweeted that. He blocked me. Glenn Greenwald retweeted it. Blocked Glenn Greenwald.
For retweeting him, he blocks people?
He blocked me for retweeting
well,
that.
You wrote "holy fuck," but I don't know what Greenwald wrote. Right?
I mean, I could have been "holy fuck." I agree with him. He didn't know how I meant it.
I'm pretty sure that's not the reaction.
Holy fuck, super delegates, yay!
Right.
Express the will of the people. Who cares about voting? We're Democrats. So what he's basically saying there, Cenk, is that I'm from the Democratic Party and I don't care what the voters want. That's what he's saying. I represent no one.
In essence, though, he's actually saying, and it's unfortunately true today, that he's from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Back then, he meant it as I'm liberal, I'm progressive. Yeah. Now, the Democratic Party, represented by people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who are working with Republicans to make sure payday lenders can charge you more than 300% interest rate, which used to be called loan sharking, was illegal. Now, it's become legalized, and the briberies become legalized. So that's the Democratic Party of today in a lot of ways. Bernie Sanders is an enormous outlier, and the fact that he has challenged that party system and done as well as he has outrages a lot of people in the party. They're like, what is wrong with you? The reason they dislike him more is because he's exposing who they really are, right? So that's why Howard Dean is a little prickly about this, and he says, no, the will of the people of Vermont. I don't care about that. I'm a super delegate. And as a super delegate, I don't represent the people. I represent whatever the hell I want.
I would have typed, I don't represent anyone. Oh shit, that's true. But instead he kept going with the tweet. That should bother you as a person who used to get elected to represent people. If you don't represent anyone, and yet you have the power of 10,000 voters, each superdelegate has the same power as 10,000 regular voters, that's a problem. Even Nancy Pelosi says, and has been saying for a number of years to her credit, we need to get rid of the system. There's no argument for keeping that system other than I want the powers that be to be able to stop insurgent candidates from winning. That's the only justification. There's no democratic justification, either in terms of the sort of philosophical underpinnings of the Democratic Party or the philosophical underpinnings of democracy itself. No one can justify the superdelegate system continuing. Even the Republicans don't have superdelegates.
So, and Howard Dean had the balls, right? And if I pardon my Cantrino or whatever her name is, but the balls,
Karina or whatever her name is from
Centauros?
No, the one who appears on the weekend.
So she said. So he tweeted out to someone who came at him about this. He said, "Hey, how about a little tolerance for people with different points of view? Just because I have a different point of view doesn't mean I'm a sellout." And of course, immediately people are like, "No, you're a sellout because you're now a lobbyist for the industry." What are you talking? That's why you're a sellout because you're a fucking sellout. You're not a sellout because we disagree with you. You're a sellout because you fucking sold out. You used to be for single payer, and now you're not. What changed? You're now a lobbyist for the insurance industry. That's why you're a sellout. God damn it. Why, when Democrats talk to other Democrats like they're low information voters, drives me fucking crazy.
And it's ironic because they're the ones who are taking advantage of low information voters.
Yes.
Right? And so Howard Dean here says, well, we're allowed to disagree, but Howard, we're not disagreeing about policy issues. We're disagreeing on whether super delegates should get to overrule the opinion of the voters. But the amazing thing is, in the Democratic Party, that's a legitimate argument. As John pointed out, it's not even an argument in the Republican Party. They're like, I mean, that's a bridge too far.
Yes,
right. Yeah, we got to have the establishment just pick the candidate. Just put your whole, not just thumb, but hand, arm, your whole body on the scale of and go, voters, I'm just going to have this giant block of super delegates, and we're just all going to go to the politician who's going to, grease us more. Yeah. And that's not a legitimate argument to have, right? And if you want to be on that side of the argument, okay, but then you shouldn't be surprised that people are mad about that. Are you really surprised?
Yeah, and I sort of, this is obvious, but I think maybe it deserves being stated again. One of two things will happen. Either the superdelegates will go along with what the actual elected delegates will do, in which case they're unnecessary. They're simply mimicking what the actual elected delegates do. Or they won't, and that's a disaster. So in the one case, they can't be allowed to continue, and in the other case, there's no reason for them to continue.
That's right.
And even if for the next 1,000 years they always vote with the people, it still will always make a lot of people feel like, well, God, at any time they could vote the other way. It makes you unnecessarily feel like your democracy could be overturned.
So let me add one more wrinkle to this. That's so important. And I got to double down on what John said. There's the best case scenario is that they're irrelevant, right? And if your best case scenario is that they're irrelevant, then why have them? The whole point of having the superdelegates is to circumvent democracy.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the whole point of it.
Yes.
So you can have a different opinion about that, Howard, but understand where you stand. Don't lie to people about it. You're the one trying to trick low information voters by saying, "Oh, we just have different opinions about democracy. You're for it, I'm against it." Yeah. Right?
One of the things they say, one of the reasons that some people try to give for why these people should have this special power is that they've served the party for a long time, so they deserve to have influence. All they have is influence. They're governors and senators and former presidents. That's their currency. They have influence. They can call press conferences. They can talk to any influential person in their state that they want. They are already showered in influence. And, by the way, they have a vote. They can go in and they can caucus or they can vote in a primary the same as everyone else. That's what influence is. And they're also, by the way, almost universally incredibly rich people. They have all different sorts of influence. I can't even count the number of different influences they have.
John, you're going to force me to make more points, okay? Number one, it's such a great point by John. They also get a vote. But in essence, what they're saying here is, come on, let's be honest, my vote should count more than your vote, right? I'm a powerful person. You're just a citizen. So what am I going to do? Go vote in Vermont like any other citizen? No, I'm powerful.
Yes.
My vote should count a lot more. And then think about that. The Democratic Party has decided that the powerful aren't powerful enough.
Yeah.
Let's give them even more advantages. Let's take their vote, have it worth so many of your votes. Can you imagine anything more undemocratic than that? Okay, now, finally, the point I was going to make is, you're wondering, or maybe some of you are, why are all of these politicians and the pundits I see on TV that used to be liberal but now are supporting the more conservative candidate, like, what's going on here? Why are they all supporting Hillary Clinton? I'll tell you why. Because they all want a job. Okay, now, it's not just that, right? And
that's how when I don't disagree with you. It's because I don't want to lose my job.
So luckily here, we're all allowed to disagree.
No, we're not. No, we're not.
Wait a minute. That's ironic. Okay. All right. So some of them, I'm sure, earnestly believe that Hillary Clinton is the more pragmatic candidate, and there are real reasons to be for Hillary Clinton. They might like her policy on guns better, yada yada. It's certainly possible, right? Some of them might say, hey, wouldn't it be great if we broke the glass ceiling for women? And they think that that's a very important historical mark, etc. So I'm not discounting all of them at all, right? But some of them think, well, if she's in power and I was good to her, maybe I get a cabinet position. Yeah. Maybe I get this. Maybe I get that.
Ambassadorship.
Right? Exactly. And if you're one of the pundits, if they like you, well, you're going to get access. And if you get access, maybe you get more stories. You make it on air more. You get a book, right? All these things matter. Or maybe, golly gee, maybe she'll put me in the government. Maybe I'll get to be a spokesperson. So they know Bernie Sanders isn't going to do them those favors. The only person who can do them those kind of quasi-corrupt favors, and it's not more corrupt than anybody else. That's usually how the system works. That's part of why we, have issues with the system, right? Certainly every Republican would do that. Almost every Democrat but Bernie Sanders would do that. Yeah. But he's at a disadvantage because since he's not going to grease them with favors, they got no reason to support him. Whereas the other side, if you don't support her and she wins, you're going to get punished. But if you do support her and she wins, you might get a job or you might get other favors.
You can. Really fast. You can cross Bernie by supporting Hillary, and Bernie will probably still consider you because he would bring people in based on the merit, whereas she would be vindictive. So it's both ways you lose by supporting Bernie.
That's exactly right. So that is at least a huge part of the explanation as to why almost all the superdelegates go to Hillary Clinton, because they care about the consequences. Yeah. Okay. Now, I have more for you guys. Okay, so let's get to the part where I disagree with Bernie Sanders. Oh, I'm sorry. One quick thing. While we were talking, they finally did the thing that we were expecting all along. Donald Trump has won Louisiana. So there's only one outstanding race left, and that is Kentucky on the Republican side. Okay? Maine votes for the Democrats tomorrow. And we'll cover that at 7:30 p.m. Eastern here.
It looks to me, I'm going to check to make sure, but it looks like he's winning by a smaller margin than they expected.
In Kentucky?
No, in Louisiana. But right now as things stand, though, only about 20% reporting he's winning by about 16 or so. So that's still
okay. In that case, he was up. The average was 15.6. Okay.
Yeah. Rubio and Kasich are going to really have a hard time making a case for themselves going forward.
Kasich, from what we saw I think it was in Kentucky. I'm terrible at geography. The counties bordering Ohio, to whatever extent those actually have anything to say about Ohio, Kasich and Trump were like exactly tied, and Cruz was actually close as well. So Ohio is going to be interesting, and Ohio and Florida are integral to the whole idea of stopping Trump from getting 50% plus one of the delegates.
Yeah,
and so Kasich will serve a purpose there, certainly.
And I just real quick on that, Kasich has a much better chance of winning Ohio than Rubio does of winning Florida. So if you're looking at Rubio, you think, look, dude, if you're going to lose in Florida, which is going to happen in about 10 days, where are you going to win? You're not going to win anywhere. So then it feels super irrelevant and weird, right? Whereas if Kasich at least wins in Ohio, and maybe, especially if, and it's a big if he wins in Michigan, which is nearby, obviously, which happens in a couple of days, then Kasich's got a case to make for himself.
Yeah.
Right now, he's trailing Rubio in almost every race, except one, I think, today. But he's got a better chance at states going forward.
So the thing with Rubio is there's that small outside chance he could do well in Florida, which doesn't seem very high right now. But having him in cuts into the vote to some extent with Trump, I guess, in some states. But also more importantly, while not many people thought that he won the debate that we covered just a couple of days ago, he did hit Trump, I think, fairly effectively on a number of different issues. So it could be that the financial backers want him to stay in, even if he can't win another election.
Spoiler to do that
to
role.
play spoiler,
I think
just
so.
beat the crap out of Trump in every debate, and maybe to amp it up each time.
He's obviously he's a concoction now of the donor class, right? I mean, he doesn't really have any.
He can play the Christie role in this case.
And Bernie is outperforming expectations, so he should quit soon. Rubio just came in 5th. I think he can pull it off. Hold on. Somebody tweeted that at me. That was very funny.
Okay, now let's talk about how Bernie Sanders is more liberal than that. So I finally found something, and it's not finally. There's a couple of things I pointed out actually throughout all these months of coverage. But one thing that he's definitively more liberal on than I am. The capital gains rate being at different times, I think it might have been as low as 15%, certainly 20% for a long time, and now still way below the top rate of 39.4. I think it's around 25 now, if I'm not mistaken. So we're doing live coverage here, so I don't have the notes on the exact rate in front of me right now. But it's much lower than the top marginal tax rate. Okay, that's a crime. The fact that the people who get capital gains are the richest people in the country, the most powerful people in the country, and it's not wages. Like you go work and you get an income, and if you're in the top bracket, you'd pay way more than they do for capital gains. And by the way, yes, doctors, dentists, even if they're in the top bracket, they work hard, right? But they get income, right? But the capital gains, which is from investments, gets charged less money. So the richest get the best rate. So that and they're not working for it. It's just investments. I know I've done investments before. You know what you do? You press a button. That's all you do. Okay. Now, I know that there are more complications to that. So I give you all that as background for what's happening now is horrible. I totally agree with Bernie Sanders that we should change it. He says not the top rate, the rate for capital tax should be 68%. That would be gigantic. Okay. So I agree with him that the minimum wage needs to be raised to 15%. I'm sorry, $15, because we've got to bring up the poor and the middle class so that they can have a livable wage. I agree that the capital gains being lower than the top bracket is criminal. Okay, but 68% for capital gains. So Bernie is not playing around.
Bear in mind one thing. I heard a guy who I respect a lot, seems like a smart guy, knows politics really well, who says that you don't come in having already compromised with your offer. High number.
Yeah, but
you get something compromised.
But that's a weird argument.
That's weird.
So you're saying...
Why am I caucusing out of my mouth right now?
Maybe he doesn't want to actually institute that 68% number. That maybe that's just...
He might want to.
That's his beginning number, and then he can compromise down to maybe a more number that's more palatable to somebody, say, like, I don't know, a former Republican.
I don't know who you guys are talking about, but I do agree that guy is really smart. Yeah. Okay. So let me fill that out, actually, because it's funny you say that, because it just saw two relevant things about that. One was from a Bernie Sanders speech where he said a couple of days ago, look, if you ask for a full loaf, you might get, at a worst-case scenario, half a loaf. If you ask for half a loaf, you'll get crumbs, right? I think that's enormously true, and we've seen, unfortunately, President Obama asked for half a loaf over and over again, and either get crumbs or nothing from the Republicans. Even Affordable Care Act that he passed, he got 0 votes from the Republicans, so not even crumbs. The other part of that that's interesting is that I just read an article about how Bernie Sanders passed a couple pieces of legislation when he was in the Senate. And the Republicans, and I don't know if they're doing this partly as a hit against Hillary Clinton. You got to realize that might be the case because of politics and they really dislike her. Or they might be somewhat genuine. They said, hey, you know what Bernie Sanders did when we were negotiating with him on Veterans Affairs? He asked for a lot, and then we asked for a lot because we're Republicans. They didn't say that last part, but it's implicit. And then he negotiated, and we compromised. And you know what? He got a lot for his side. I mean, there it was. It was McCain
that's a
said
good idea.
that, Burr said that, Wicker said that, all these hardcore Republicans. And they're like, look, he was fair, and what we like about him is you know where he stands. He hasn't wavered in 40 years, and he's a man of his word. So he's not going to stab you in the back. If he says this is what he's going for, that's what he's going for. And at the end of the day, he was reasonable enough to compromise and get a lot for his side. So, yes, we believe in compromise. Like, the way that the establishment Democrats frame it, like, oh, liberals, progressives, they're so childish.
Yeah.
They don't know that the real art of politics is compromise. No, you're childish. If you go in with a preemptive compromise, well, then you're going to get pushed further right wing, unless that's actually your intention, which is enormously possible, right? But if your intention is to get as much as you can for your side, you start here, and then you make a reasonable compromise, not a Republican right wing compromise. Okay, now that brings you to John's point, which I hear you, brother. Maybe the 68% is a way to go for the full loaf, and then he'll get it at 39.4, which is where it should be, right? So if that's the strategy, okay, then I'm back with it, right? But if you actually institute a 68% capital gains tax, I think that actually could affect investment and all the things that Republicans say about.
How about we find
money
out for a couple of years?
No, I hear you. And I'm going to say one last thing about that too, but money fleeing out of the country, they're full of crap. Our taxes are so low and so riddled with loopholes. The only reason money goes out of the country is because we allow those loopholes. Yeah. So what they say now is total crap, right? But there is a number at which that would actually happen, right? It's just that we're nowhere near that number. Yeah. So that's why if we're in this fantasy land, we were to go too far left, I think I would be a voice of moderation in the opposite direction. But in the real world, we're so far right wing, taxes are so low for the rich and powerful that point well taken from John and Jimmy that Bernie modulating that and trying to move the Overton window a little bit more to the actual center, right, and bring us to a reasonable rate might be the way to go.
What do you? Think is a reasonable rate. 39, right?
Yeah, where the top marginal tax rate.
Do you think it would be?
Yeah.
Okay, because you think putting it up anymore would people wouldn't want to invest anymore?
So let's get super real about that, right? You're only going to get a certain percentage of your winnings because it kind of is gambling. Like it's investment, and it's not like you're going.
But you get to write it off if it loses,
right? You do, but that's not nearly as effective. Okay, and so. If you're only going to keep 60% of your winnings, again, sorry to make everything about gambling, but it kind of is, right? Especially if you're trading stocks.
You're investing in new media. And, a 10-year-old show that's proven itself to be the most popular thing ever on the internet for news. I've never heard of it.
Right. And so, by the way, that's a fair point. Like, if maybe one day capital gains could affect us. And then I'd be a little bit more touchy about that, right? Maybe. So we should put that bias out there, right? So, whereas if you lose the money, you can lose it all, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that creates a little bit of an imbalance. You don't want to create a disincentive for investment. But when they say, hey, if my taxes aren't rock bottom, then I'll have a disincentive to invest, that part is totally bullshit. Because you got to do something with your money.
Yeah.
It's not like you're like, oh, you know what, I'm only earning 85% I only get to keep 85% of my winnings. But again, there is a balancing act there. Like, for example, if you took 90% of the money you made from capital gains, then you'd be like, wow, that risk is really not worth it. I'm better off just keeping my money under a mattress.
So can I just give you the quick headline from the Washington Post?
I was just going to do that. That's so funny.
This is it. So now, obviously, Bernie won 2 states, right? Ted Cruz won 2 states. You think Bernie has momentum, maybe? Cruz gains steam with 2 wins on Super Saturday. Clinton wins delegate-rich L.A. Louisiana.
That's unbelievable.
That's unbelievable.
That's unbelievable.
It's true. It is true.
It's true.
Cruz gains more steam. He's getting steam. He won 2 states.
We're gonna do some metaphors for him, and then who's Sanders?
No, there's an extra layer to that. So first of all, during this live coverage, we told you this would happen. And here, later in the night, it just literally happened, right? Now, the second layer to that is that Cruz wins 2 states. Actually, the Republicans had 4 races. The Democrats had 3. So
It's less.
yes, Cruz won 2 states, but so did Trump. So that's kind of a tie. And by the way, Trump won delegate-rich Louisiana, right? But when Trump wins it, it's not delegate-rich. When Hillary Clinton wins it, it's delegate-rich. Okay? So even though they tied on the Republican side, Cruz with 2-state win. Okay, fine, you treat that any way you like. Now wait a minute, but Bernie Sanders won 2 states. She only won 1 state. It's not even mentioned in the title.
Not even because a weird state.
It seems like it's like Hillary Clinton won the 1 state that was at play. If you look at that title. And the other day, I read this great article. I wish I remember the exact percentage, but it confirmed something I've been telling you guys for literally over a decade. It was something like over 70% of the people that look at an article only read the headline. They don't even read the first sentence.
Yep. Yeah.
So the headline is monumentally more important than what you write in the article. So when you see a headline like that in a place like the Washington Post, where they go, it makes it seem like Ted Cruz and Hillary Clinton were the big winners.
Yep.
It's not that they're dismissing Bernie Sanders' 2 victories. They don't even mention it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like, oh, he won, but it's not a big deal. It makes it seem like he lost.
Yes.
Amazing.
I have to assume that he did lose. I think he's.
I'm pretty sure if the mainstream media says it must be true.
Yeah.
Okay. That's unbelievable. And
Oh,
look,
by the way, what really fast, I happen to notice, I don't know that this matters, but CNN, their election coverage, they just ran an ad it was sponsored by the American Petroleum Institute.
Oh, no kidding.
oh, I've seen that ad all over TV and mainly on CNN.
Okay.
So it's this woman who comes out who looks like Christy Lemire, and from What the Flick, and she comes and she's like, "Oh my God, energy's so wonderful. Energy runs things. Oh, thank you, energy, wonderful, yay!" And then they go away. Now, part of the reason they run that is, I guess, to appeal to you guys to not bash oil companies that much. But the main reason they run it is to have influence over CNN.
Yes.
So
Why do you think Boeing advertises on Meet the Press? Do you think people watching Meet the Press are going to buy a jet? They're doing that to have influence over them. That's why. That's what the news isn't produced for you. The news is produced for their donors, the people who buy the ads on their shows. So I'm sorry.
No, that leads perfectly to what I was going to say. So thank you for supporting us. Yeah, we do not look. From time to time, we have advertising. We should have a lot more. Okay, but we don't cater to them, right? Maybe that's why we don't have more.
Yeah, I bet you that's it.
Right, that's part of it. Well, oil companies tried to buy advertising on us a long time ago, and we said no. And they were like, weird. We come from weird states.
Would it have been a lot of money?
It would have been some money.
Yeah. I've and again, this is where I disagree with Jack. I'm ready to sell out immediately.
So luckily, because of you guys, we don't have to. TYTnetwork.com/join. Look, wouldn't it be fun and amazing if this little engine that could, powered by you guys, just like Bernie Sanders, $27 at a time, whatever it is, right? Took down all the Goliaths, and we're in the middle of doing it.
We're doing it.
Yeah,
but I would rather do it from the back of Trump's jet. Come on, that'd be fun too, right?
Could you imagine Jimmy Dore show, powered by Trump and Chevron, Trump Steaks, and BP. They've done a wonderful job of cleaning up the Gulf.
Jimmy, Trump won the election. How are you dealing with it? Well, Jen, I've been drowning my sorrows in fresh caught lobster.
I'm going to different websites to see how they're spinning what happened. So CNBC, Cruz Sanders split Super Saturday decision. That's fine. That's good. Fox News.
Well, it's actually not fine. First of all, it makes it sound like it's Cruz versus Sanders.
It does,
They
yeah.
split the decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Second of all, if you get past that weird phrasing, you might think that they both split, which actually Cruz did split with Trump, but Sanders did not split with Hillary Clinton. He won.
So Fox News has breaking news. Ted's night. Cruz wins Maine, Kansas GOP caucuses. Trump wins Louisiana primaries. Dems split as Sanders takes Nebraska. Clinton wins Louisiana. Somebody please call 911 and look for Kansas because nobody knows where it is.
It's gone.
Kansas was called an hour and 20 minutes ago. I don't even know how long ago.
It was the first one called.
So I know.
No, but wait a minute.
I don't even understand.
No, but see, you understand what John just did? Isn't that amazing? I mean, we told you they would do this, They've done it in a fashion that is more unbelievable than what we predicted earlier in the night.
Yeah.
Like they literally left out the Kansas win in order to call it a split between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders.
MSNBC
We thought that they would be subtle about it, right? They're just like, no, we literally won't count Kansas. We won't put it in the headline.
They put a tarp over Kansas. No one can see it for the next week or so.
Fox News took Kansas out. Washington Post took Kansas and Nebraska out.
Well, here's what they say. Phil, you get the Washington Post article about it. You have to wait till the fourth paragraph before they mention Bernie Sanders. And what they say is, meanwhile, Bernie Sanders defeated former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in Kansas and Nebraska caucuses. But, this is the next sentence, but Clinton's forceful projected win in delegate-rich Louisiana keeps her vast delegate lead for the Democratic Party's nomination intact. That's all they said, and they moved on again back to Trump.
That's got some spin on it. I mean, look, Louisiana does have more delegates than either Kansas or Nebraska individually.
100% spin, Johnny.
Yeah, it is spin, but I mean, look, it's fine to say it's more important to win Louisiana big than to win either of the other big. You can say that, and she won Louisiana bigger than he won either Kansas or Nebraska. So overall, that's better. That's fine to say, but it's not fine to just pretend that Kansas doesn't exist. I understand. I go months without thinking about Kansas, but you're writing up an article that people are going to be reading.
Yeah, and it's the dismissive attitude, etc. Is more problematic. I'm with John. If they said, look, Louisiana has more delegates and she won more votes there, but Bernie Sanders was too, keeps his momentum, at least in those states, etc. That's a fair depiction of how it happened. But given the headline and given the way that they wrote that paragraph, that's not how they describe it.
I would probably mention as well that if we're going to get into the game of, we knew they were going to win that state, everybody knew that she was going to win Louisiana comfortably. We did not know that he would win definitely Kansas, I believe Nebraska as well. I'm starting to get the polls mixed up in my head, but there was, I believe in Kansas's case, there was only one poll, and it showed her up by 10. But for some reason, winning the one that she was going to obviously win is more.
I'll give you one more example, okay, of how. Now, this one can't be tested because it didn't turn out this way. But if she had won Kansas and Nebraska, the headlines would not have been dismissive or split or anything. I understand it wouldn't have been a split, but even if it was a split, like he won Nebraska, she won Kansas, right? Yeah. The headlines would have been Hillary Clinton wins big, unexpected win for Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders nearly wiped out, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So if that would be the headline, if she won, how come it doesn't matter at all that he wins? Yeah. It's endless. It's endless.
So here's how, this is unfair reporting, what they're doing. It's completely, you turn to the newspaper for them to say, hey, you know what the candidates say, and it's all kind of bullshit. Well, here's what it really means. You need someone else now to take the newspaper and do that with the newspaper. You see what the newspaper's doing? Well, this is all kind of bullshit. Here's what it really means. Because here's what they're saying. So they're saying, and this is Washington Post, in the Democratic contest, Sanders is facing down questions about how much longer he can realistically stay in the race with Clinton's prohibitive delegate lead. Okay, she only has a prohibitive delegate lead if you count Howard Dean. Right? If you count super delegates, which is the most undemocratic thing in the world, and lots of Democrats are screaming about it. They go on the list. She has 1,066 delegates, including super delegates, to his 432. And then they don't explain what the hell that means. Meaning that the people voting, she doesn't have a lead in that. She has a lead in delegates handpicked by the elite of the party. They don't say that. They leave that. That's like the most important part of that sentence, and they leave it out, and they make it look like, again, Bernie Sanders never close, no momentum. Here's a guy who didn't even have a campaign this time last year. He's winning 2 out of 3 states today, and they don't even mention it like that. It's worse than we could have ever imagined, and that's who gets their news from YouTube.
Okay, one more thing about that, because. These guys are the guys who will always turn around and tell us, you have to be realistic, right? You have to. Okay, but wait a minute. If we're being realistic, the super delegates last time around with Obama and Hillary Clinton went with the way that the population voted. They became irrelevant. They didn't stick with who they were going to vote with originally, which was Hillary Clinton had a lead in 2008. So if you're being realistic, those superdelegates have not stayed with who they originally said they were going to in previous elections. So it's actually horribly misleading to say as if those are already vote. They already vote. They didn't already vote. They almost always go with the person who won the popular vote. So you are terribly misleading your audience by saying the superdelegates are going to vote that way.
It would almost be like if CNN decided, you know what, we've got polls for 5 states that are coming up a month from now. Polls show that she's up by 10. We're just going to give her those delegates. They haven't voted yet. Doesn't matter. We're just going to add it to her.
Mm-hmm.
I think CNN just called the next debate for Hillary. I'm sorry.
Okay, so one last thing. Look, Trump is, I don't know what he's doing. He's measuring his hands or whatever. And I don't care that much. So if he doesn't come out, if he doesn't come out soon, we're going to call it. Okay, I don't think you're going to be broken up by it. And if we're here when we do play-by-play, so if Trump's here, we'll make fun of him. You'll enjoy it. But if we're not here, trust me that other channels are going to have Trump's speech, right?
And we'll get to make fun of him tomorrow during his speech as well.
That's right,
because they will have Puerto Rico.
Yes, and there's a debate tomorrow night as well.
Yeah.
So, but I did want to say one more thing, and then we'll see if Trump comes out in time. Otherwise, we'll call it. So this is just a fun one, right? Did you have the immigration quotes too, by the way?
Oh yes, I do have those immigration quotes.
Right.
Would you like
we'll
those?
do those two things. Yeah.
Okay.
So, we've been in a bit of a fight with these liberal pundits and establishment media, yada yada. Jimmy got me into a fight with Joan Walsh yesterday, and he's here totally your fault. And then
I like Joan Walsh. I think she's. I don't know. You're the one who called her. I like her. I think she's attractive. I think she has good.
Oh Jesus Christ!
I think
the bro is back.
See, there you go.
The Bernie bro is back.
Okay.
I mean, no. I'm talking about her policy.
Okay. All right. So now you're going to force us to clarify for people who don't.
All right, so that was ironic.
We're kidding.
That was ironic that we did a video yesterday, which was about 13 minutes long. It was all about us ranting and raving about how these critics of Bernie's supporters are accusing us of being sexist. And what we're saying is that, no, what we're doing here is we're just talking about policy. And Jen, you challenge those people to come back with you with critiques on policy and not accuse us of sexism, because that's what we're talking about, policy. Joan Walsh made a tweet, and she goes, hey, next time you want to dispel the notion of Bernie bros, let a woman talk on the panel, which, by the way, is condescending to the woman on the panel, as if she couldn't speak up for herself or something. She's a co-host of the goddamn show, and I think she can speak, but you were on a rant.
She's not familiar with Anna.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's what happened. It was ironic that we're asking people to come at us with policy and not smear us about being sexist, and that's exactly what she did. So that's funny.
That's funny.
That's funny. That doesn't mean she's a bad person. It just means it's funny.
And in the middle of the clip, we said Anna made the best point. But that was very sexist.
In the middle of the clip, yes.
Anyway. But that's not why I brought it up. I brought it up because then somebody writes in as a response to that clip, like, oh yeah, they're criticizing Hillary, but I bet they didn't do that for Obama. I was like, oh, well, you definitely haven't watched the show. And then Joan is like, oh yeah, that's right. Why don't they go after Obama?
No, and it's not even like you have to
go back. I got asked off of MSNBC because I went after Obama too hard. I think I got that one covered.
And by the way, we criticize during the debates when we're criticizing Clinton. We criticize Obama for the same thing, for accepting that money. You don't have to go back to when he was running. Now, watch any of our clips recently, and we criticize them.
Yeah, but consistency is very. I don't like it. It's unbecoming. When you're consistent, it makes me want. What's wrong with you?
It's a hobgoblin of small minds, right? Oh, by the way, and of sexist minds as well.
Yes.
So 538 is going crazy about the apparent difference in Louisiana's early voting before, like several days ago, versus the votes that are coming in today. And right now, I mean, there's 41% reporting in Louisiana. Cruz has cut Trump's lead down to to 8 points. It was at 16 before.
Oh.
So this could be an evidence of, at least in Kentucky, the turn you were talking about, maybe. Or it could be an organizational thing, of course.
No, that's very interesting. So, and by the way, in Kentucky, the lead for Trump is down to 6, and it has not been called yet. So that's still outstanding.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So maybe there is that turn, exactly as we talked about at the very beginning. Okay, so anyway, I just couldn't help but point out the most untrue criticism of me probably ever, that I don't criticize Obama. Okay, And that's because he's a male, of course, and not, instead of Hillary Clinton, who's a female, and I'm a bro. Okay, immigration?
So, David Sirota, who I follow on Twitter, tweeted this. Oh, I just lost it, though. Can you believe that?
You had it up for, like, forever.
Forever, so please, still, while I get it back.
Okay, all right. Actually, that was my last topic.
Here it is.
Okay.
So, here it is. I got it. I have it again. So, this is her own words, Hillary Clinton's own words on immigration. She said, quote, this is on February 9th, 2015, quote, I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in. That's February 9th, 2015. She said that. Hillary Clinton on child immigrants fleeing violence, quote, they should be sent back. That's June 18th, 2014.
Yeah, but I mean, Jimmy, to be fair, that's all the way back in 2014.
Just and that's weird. That's a weird year. You don't count those years.
But Jimmy, you say that like, we got her. No, because I'm just saying, don't worry. She's going to be proud of those quotes in the general election.
In the general election,
if she makes it there,
She's get things done.
she's going to say, "Hey, man, you don't need to vote for Trump to get a wall. I was in favor of a barrier before Trump was." Right? And of course, there's a difference between Hillary Clinton's immigration plan and Trump's. A gigantic difference. You can build a wall between the difference of those two positions. But there's also a difference between Hillary Clinton's immigration proposals and Bernie Sanders. So you have to be realistic about that as well.
By the way, also, this is just kind of funny. June 3rd, 2011, she said it's time for the United States to start thinking of Iraq as a business opportunity.
Really?
I remember. Yes, she said that. That was in Slate.
Wow. I didn't know that one.
And
by the way, Bernie Sanders won Kansas by 35 points. He was in the polling losing by 10. He won by 35. But he won Nebraska by about 11.
But that's, you know how that's being described in the media?
What?
Eking out small wins in mostly white states. Small wins. Her win is bigger. Her win is bigger. Almost 50 is bigger than 35. I wouldn't say it's that bigger. 15 points.
But could you imagine if we're like Hillary Clinton ekes out a victory in Louisiana?
You know
we
what?
couldn't say it with a straight face.
No, let's title the video of that and see what happens. Hillary narrowly wins Louisiana.
That's unbelievable. I mean,
I might get hired at MSNBC.
Okay, all right, we're going to end, guys. But look at this insane world we live in, where now all the mainstream media has agreed upon the idea that white voters don't matter in this country.
Yeah.
They want to dispel the notion that white voters matter in America, because they don't. Yeah. I've never heard that in any election of my lifetime. That white voters, that the majority of the country don't count. Yeah, they don't matter.
And again,
when Hillary Clinton made the exact opposite point in 2008 when she was running against Barack Obama.
We got to reiterate, if you have mostly white voters voting for you, or white voters are more likely to vote for you, that can mean a bad thing. If you're running an election, your campaign is designed to appeal to whites. Perhaps you're, pushing African American protesters out of your rallies. You're saying Muslims, we should ban them from the country. If you're saying whites are the only good people and you're attacking other groups and thus only whites vote for you, it's perfectly fine to criticize that strategy. But if he is saying all of the right things, he's being inclusive, he's being tolerant, and it just happens that whites are more likely to vote for him, he doesn't become a racist then. That doesn't make you a racist.
That goes to why they're saying it, by the way. There's also a second scenario where white votes don't matter as much. If you're running in Zaire, okay, but in the United States of America, there's more white voters. No, but the reason that the Hillary Clinton campaign runs with that is not because they actually think white voters don't matter. That's preposterous. No one in their right mind could believe that, right? No, because they want to imply a racism that doesn't exist
and hope that people pick up on it.
Yeah, it's implicit. Like, oh, he only gets white voters. Like, what does that mean, right? There's the next part of that sentence is he's only appealing to whites. But Bernie Sanders is the most liberal senator, has an excellent ratings on civil rights, has campaigned for civil rights for 40 years, and you know that, in fact, you criticize him for being too liberal, right? But, okay, now the last part of that is, fine, Hillary Clinton campaign can say anything they want, they're in the middle of a race, they're playing hardball politics. why is the rest of the media all parroting a patently preposterous point that white voters don't matter in America is being repeated by almost every media outlet. Oh, Bernie Sanders, he wins Kansas and Nebraska, but does that really count because they're white voters? Yeah. Oh, he won in heavily white states like Minnesota and New Hampshire, so does that really count? But none of them are saying Hillary Clinton won in places like South Carolina, where a majority of the Democratic primary voters are African American. And by the way, when Jesse Jackson won in South Carolina, it was black voters don't count. Right? Yeah. So if you're an anti-establishment candidate, well, Jesse Jackson's black voters didn't count. Bernie Sanders' white voters didn't count.
It's fitting, though.
Preposterous.
No, Cenk, it's fitting because Bernie Sanders did endorse both candidacies of Jesse Jackson back in the 80s.
That's right.
That they should treat them both the same way.
And by the way, in Burlington, Vermont, which was enormously high percentage of white citizens that he's representing there, Bernie Sanders still had the courage to back Jesse Jackson back in 1988. Okay. Way before anybody else was on board on that train, right? And Bernie Sanders was backing the black candidate anyway. But now there's a smear as if he's only for white,
and it's libs doing it. Like the idea that you would try to assert that someone you know is not racist is running a racist campaign. And then after this, let's say Bernie loses and Hillary becomes a candidate. They get to go back to saying, "Oh, look, I'm a lib blogger. I'm a lib. I write for this website. I have podcasts. I'm a big lib. I'm totally tolerant." But I was complicit in smearing a man that I knew was innocent of the thing I was asserting he was, and I'm seeing it on my Twitter feed every single day, and it's disgusting. And by the way, while this is going on, the lead continues to dwindle. Louisiana, Trump's only up by 4.5. So it went from 16 down to 8. Now it's almost down to 4. And remember, Louisiana was called a long time ago. And he might still win, but it's getting smaller.
Trump probably was waiting to see if Kentucky gets called for him so he can come out and brag about winning 2 states.
He's only up by 4.1 in Kentucky.
Yeah, but he might want to hurry up and get out there before he loses Louisiana, before they take it off the board. That would be a fun moment.
4.5. Okay.
Yeah. So, Trump, just go back to the Republicans for one last second. Trump did pretty poorly tonight, and he was supposed to win in Maine. He didn't. That's an upset. He got crushed in Kansas in a way. Losing in Kansas was not a surprise for Trump. Losing the way that he did was he was supposed to win big in Louisiana. Now their lead is down to 4.5. And Kentucky was supposed to be another nice win for him. The lead's down to 4 and hasn't been called yet. That's not a good night for Trump. Okay. So we'll follow up on that tomorrow. We're back at 7:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Okay. All right.
What is it?
Says Bernie Sanders wins the Huffington Post. Bernie Sanders wins caucuses. Road ahead gets tougher.
Mm-hmm. That might be true. That might be true.
Not like
I'm more okay with that.
Now things are turning for him. The tide. Nothing.
Yeah.
All right. Tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, TYTnetwork.com/live. We'll see you guys right back here. Bye-bye.